These Sherlock Holmes stories are a collection of the various actors that played the part of Sherlock over the years. I hope you enjoy them. Sherlock Holmes is a fictional detective created by British author Arthur Conan Doyle. Referring to himself as a consulting detective in the stories, Holmes is known for his proficiency with observation, deduction, forensic science and logical reasoning that borders on the fantastic, which he employs when investigating cases for a wide variety of clients, including Scotland Yard. First appearing in print in 1887's A Study in Scarlet, the character's popularity became widespread with the first series of short stories in the Strand magazine, beginning with A Scandal in Bohemia in 1891. Additional tales appeared from then until 1927, eventually totaling 4 novels and 56 short stories. All but one are set in the Victorian or Edwardian eras, between about 1880 and 1914. Most are narrated by the character of Holmes's friend and biographer Dr. John H. Watson, who usually accompanies Holmes during his investigations and often shares quarters with him at the address of 221B, Baker Street, London, where many of the stories begin. The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is a radio drama series which aired in the USA from 1939 to 1950. It ran for 374 episodes, with many of the later episodes considered lost media. The series was based on the Sherlock Holmes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. For most of the show's run, the program starred Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes and Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson. Other actors played Holmes and Watson in later seasons.
The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starring Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. The makers of Grove's bromoquinine tablets bring you another adventure of Sherlock Holmes, with Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes and Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson. A cold is a miserable thing. A cold may become a dangerous thing. Even a so-called light cold can take a serious turn. Be prompt, be decisive in your treatment of a cold. At the very first sign of a cold, take Grove's bromoquinine tablets. Bromoquinine tablets quickly check the symptoms of a cold, quickly relieve the distress of a cold. They give you speedy results, which are very important. Don't monkey around when you can get such a dependable preparation as Grove's bromoquinine tablets. And now, here we are again on our usual visit to Dr. Watson. He's waiting for us in his study, a cheerful blaze crackling on the hearth.
I'm very relieved to see you, Mr. Manning. Hasn't the weather been atrocious today? I was beginning to wonder if you'd be able to get here tonight through all this fog.
Yes, it certainly is what you Londoners call a regular pea souper.
Yes, indeed. It reminds me of the adventure of the missing submarine plans. A case that was solved in the underground.
Underground?
What you Americans call a subway.
Yes, but what has a solution in a subway got to do with a foggy night?
Well, you see, the affair started in weather exactly like this. It was the 3rd week in November, the year 1895, to be exact. On Monday, a dense yellow fog had settled down upon London. On Thursday, it was still there, thicker and murkier than ever. At first, Holmes had turned his nervous energy to cross-indexing his huge reference books. But when, after pushing our breakfast chairs back for the 4th morning, we saw the greasy brown swirl still drifting past the windows, Holmes's patience snapped. Holmes, if you must pace around in circles, I wish you'd change directions now and then. You're making me dizzy.
Bah, it's inexcusable, Watson, inexcusable. No initiative, no imagination. Nothing ever gets done.
If you're alluding to the inactivity in this last session of Parliament, my dear Holmes...
I'm not speaking of our lawmakers, Watson, but of our lawbreakers. The London criminal is certainly a dull fellow.
What makes you say that?
Well, look out of the window. Ideal weather for committing a crime. The criminal advances on his intended victim practically unseen. He pounces and disappears into thin air.
There have been numerous petty thefts, I believe.
Petty thefts, pickpockets, ragamuffins. What's the country coming to? Now, if I were a criminal, Watson...
Well, I, for one, would move to America.
Oh, hello. Hello, Mrs. Hudson's knocking. Excited. What's up, I wonder? Yes, Mrs. Hudson, what is it? Oh, a telegram for me.
Yes, sir.
Very well, thank you.
Oh, well, what's it say?
Oh, wait until I open it, can't you? Ah, dear me. What next? Most unusual, Watson. Most unusual.
What's most unusual, Watson? What's it say?
Oh, it's from my brother, Mycroft. You remember him. He helped us solve the case of the Greek interpreter. He's coming here.
Why not? What's so phenomenal about
Why not? Why not, indeed? It's as startling as it would be to meet a tram car coming down a country lane. Yes, now I come to think of it, Mycroft is rather like a tram car. His rails lead from his Pall Mall lodgings to the Diogenes Club in Whitehall. That's his circle. I wonder what upheaval could have derailed him.
Doesn't the telegram explain?
It says, must see you about Cadogan West, coming at once.
Cadogan West? Cadogan West? Why, that's the young chap who's found dead in the underground on Tuesday morning. I remember reading about it in the papers.
Oh?
The young man had apparently fallen out of a train and killed himself. He hadn't been robbed, and there was no reason to suspect violence. Quite an uninteresting case, if I remember
And
correctly.
yet, it's serious enough to cause Mycroft to alter his habits. No, Watson. This must be an extraordinary event. Do you recall any other facts about the affair?
Yes, I come to think of it, there was one unusual bit came out of the inquest. They were unable to ascertain at what point he entered the train, because his ticket was missing.
Strange. What articles were found on the body?
£2.15, I believe it was, a checkbook, and... Oh, yes, 2 dress circle tickets for the Woolwich Theatre, dated for that evening.
Theatre tickets, eh? Then it wasn't suicide. A man doesn't procure theatre tickets for the evening on which he intends to end his life. Anything else?
A small packet of technical papers, I believe.
Technical papers? What kind of technical papers?
The newspapers didn't say.
Ah, as serious as that. What did the young man do? Where was he employed?
He was a clerk at Woolwich Arsenal.
Ah, government employee. There we have it, Watson. British government, Woolwich Arsenal, technical papers. That's why Mycroft is involved in this affair.
I don't understand.
No, I suppose not. Watson, have I ever told you what Mycroft is?
Your brother, of course.
Oh, no, Watson. Do you have to be so dense? I mean, do you know what he does?
I seem to have some vague recollection that you once told me that he'd held some small office under the British government.
It would be more accurate to say, in a way, that he is the British government.
What?
His position is unique. He made it for himself. As the tidiest and most orderly brain of any man alive, with a great capacity for storing facts and giving them the proper interpretation. The conclusions of every government department are passed on to him. He's the central exchange, the clearinghouse. Again and again, his word has decided the national policy. He thinks of nothing else. Nothing else can lure him from his contemplations.
And yet he's coming here.
Yes, Jupiter is descending on us today.
What on earth can happen?
Now, Watson, that sounds suspiciously like a bad pun. Ah, here he is, if I'm not mistaken, to speak for himself. Come in. Hello, Mycroft. What's up? You look flustered.
Most annoying business, Sherlock, most annoying. You know how I dislike altering my habits. Extremely awkward for me to come away from the office, particularly with Siam in its present state. Oh, dear me.
Yeah, sit down, Mycroft, sit down. You know Watson, of course.
Yes, of course. I'm trying to find a chair that I can trust to hold me.
I'd better take the sofa. You certainly haven't got any thinner.
I've never seen the Prime Minister so upset. As for the Admiralty, it's buzzing like an upset beehive. Do you know anything about the case?
Watson's just been telling me what was in the newspapers. Just what were the technical papers found on the body?
Sherlock, for the love of heaven, not so loud. Those papers which the wretched youth had in his pocket were none other than the plans of the Bruce Partington submarine.
Oh?
The submarine which will completely revolutionize naval warfare. The most important papers in our government archives. Under no circumstances could they be removed from the office. Even the chief constructor of the Navy was forced to go to Woolwich if he desired to consult them.
And yet we find them in the pockets of a dead junior clerk in the heart of London. Yeah, from an official point of view, it's deplorable, my dear Mycroft. Simply deplorable.
You may laugh, Sherlock, but this country won't be safe until they're recovered.
But I thought you said that they were found in the pocket of this chap, Cadogan West.
10 papers taken from Woolwich. 7 were found in the pockets of Cadogan West. 3 are still missing, the 3 essential ones. To recover those 3 papers is imperative. The peace of Europe depends on it.
Nice little problem, eh, Watson? Why did Cadogan West take the papers? How did he die? How did his body reach the place where it was found? And where are the missing papers?
Find the answer to those questions, Sherlock, and you'll have done your country an invaluable service.
Oh, why don't you solve it yourself, Mycroft? I believe you could.
Possibly. But it's a question of digging out details. Give me the details, and I can give you the solution from an armchair. No, when it comes to running about and cross-questioning railway guards and lying on one's face with a lens to one's eye, no, that's not my métier.
Besides, your figure prevents your taking such an undignified position, eh? Very well. Leave that part of it to us, eh, Watson?
Right you are.
Good. I've got a cab waiting outside to take the place where the body was found. I can give you the details on the way.
Now, Mycroft, who was the official guardian of these famous papers?
No less a personage than Sir James Walder, a gentleman who's grown grey in the service. His patriotism is beyond suspicion.
A bachelor, if I'm not mistaken, lives with his brother.
Yes. He was at the house of Admiral Sinclair at Berkeley Square during the whole of the evening when this accident occurred. The Admiral vouches for him. He's one of the two who have the only keys to the safe.
And his key was with him all evening?
Right. His key, the key to the building, the key to the room.
Who was the man with the other key?
The senior clerk, Mr. Sidney Johnson. Man of 40, married, silent, morose, with an excellent service record.
Any alibi?
He, too, had his key with him and seems to have spent the evening playing a game of draughts with a green grocer around the corner from his lodgings. Of course, he has only the word of this green grocer to back him up.
Oh, come, my dear Mycroft. No class discriminations, please. The word of a greengrocer is often just as good as that of an admiral. What about Cadogan West?
He had a good reputation. A bit hot-headed, but straight and honest. At least, everyone thought so. He was next to Sidney Johnson at the office. His duties brought him into daily personal contact with the plans. No one else ever had the handling of them.
Oh, it's perfectly clear. He must have taken...
Ah, not so fast, Watson, not so fast. Who locked them up that night?
Mr. Sidney Johnson.
Ah, they were of value, commercially, I mean.
Oh, yes. There's no doubt that West could have got several thousands for them very easily.
And yet, only a small amount of money was found on the body.
Perhaps the buyer took it back after he'd murdered West.
What puzzles me is, how did West obtain possession of those papers? To do so, he must have had a false key.
Several false keys, Sherlock. He had to open the building and the room as well.
Oh, well. Several false keys, then. Let me see. Suppose West did take the papers and went into town. And on the way back to Woolwich, where he is hoping to replace the papers, he's killed and thrown from the train.
But the spot where the body was found is considerably past the station for London Bridge, which is the route to Woolwich.
It's interesting. Also, if young West did make an appointment with some foreign agent to sell the papers that night, why didn't he keep the evening clear? Why buy 2 theater tickets?
Exactly. Furthermore, he actually escorted his fiancée halfway there before he disappeared.
Blind. That's what it looks like to me.
Why did he take the papers at all? Why not copy them out in the office and sell the copies? He certainly had plenty of opportunity to do so. And why the absence of his underground ticket?
Perhaps the ticket would have shown us which station was near the agent's house. So the murderer destroyed it.
Good, Watson. Very good. And yet, I wonder.
Well, here's the underground station. The railway authorities have sent a man round to show the exact place where the body was found.
You won't change your mind and come with us?
Well, crawling round that black hole on my hands and knees, not very likely. Well, I shall expect a report on your efforts this evening.
Never expect too much, Mycroft. Never expect too much.
Before we follow Holmes and Watson into the mazes of the London subway system, I have a word of advice. Every year, colds cause a lot of sickness. Every year, they cause a lot of expense and time lost from work. Always regard a cold seriously. Always treat it earnestly. At the first sign of a cold, take Grove's bromoquinine tablets. Bromoquinine tablets are famous relief for the distress of a cold. Their efficacy has been fully established. Bromoquinine tablets go right to work on a cold symptom. They don't waste any time. They don't pull any punches. They quickly relieve the misery of a cold. They help reduce the fever of a cold. Thousands of people keep bromoquinine tablets handy all winter. Thousands of people depend on them as their relief for colds. No other preparation enjoys greater confidence than bromoquinine tablets. Follow the example of millions, and at the first sign of a cold, take Grove's bromoquinine tablets. Get them at any drugstore, a few cents a box. Ask specifically for Grove's, Groves, Bromo, Bromo, quinine, Quinine, Grove's bromoquinine tablets.
This way, sir. Step right along the tracks.
But it isn't safe. Supposing a train should come shooting round that curve.
Oh, that's all right, sir. There won't be another for 5 minutes anyway. Here we are, sir. This is where they found the body. Right here alongside the rails. Lying on its face it was.
Spooky old place, eh, Holmes? Like the catacombs, only without the skeletons.
Yeah. Anything in his hands when they found him?
No, sir.
Were they clenched? Or spread out as if he were protecting himself?
No, sir. They was what you might call relaxed.
Ah. What time did all this happen?
Well, sir, the train he was hoisted out of, as near as we can figure, passed along here about midnight on Monday.
All the carriages have been examined for signs of violence, I suppose.
They didn't find nothing, not even the missing ticket. There was a passenger to Aldgate on the ordinary train. About 11:40 it was. He said he'd heard a heavy thud, like something striking the line, just before the train reached this station. But it was so foggy, he said he was blessed if he could see what it was.
Holmes, what's the matter? What are you staring at?
The curve, Watson.
What
Curve
of it?
of the rails.
What of it? What do you mean?
I suppose there aren't many curves as abrupt as this.
No, sir, I can't say as there is.
What have curves got to do with it?
Oh, an indication, Watson. Merely an indication. Unique. Perfectly unique. And yet, why not? I don't see any indications of bleeding on the line.
No, sir, there wasn't any to speak of.
But I understand there was a considerable wound.
The bone was crashed right enough.
Holmes, you hear that? It's a train. It's coming this way.
Run, sir. Run for your life.
Yes, yes, but where?
Up ahead. There's a place where the train switches off.
Run, Watson, run. It's just around the curve.
We'll never make it.
Yes, we will. Faster, faster.
There's the switch up ahead. Come on.
Here comes the train now.
We'll make it. Ah, Justin. Watson, for the love of heaven. You're on the wrong track.
Well, that was a narrow escape, Holmes. I must say my knees are still shaking. Look at the shoulder of my coat where you pulled it there.
Lucky thing for you that I did.
Where are we off to now in this fog?
Yes, it's a nice afternoon. Suppose we pay a few calls. I think Sir James Walter claims our first attention. After that, we might drop in on Miss Westbury.
Miss Westbury? Who's she?
She is Cadogan West's fiancée and the last person to see him alive.
Holmes, we seem to be going around in circles. We've accomplished absolutely nothing so far except to get ourselves nearly annihilated in the underground. After all, it's perfectly obvious that the young man had a quarrel with someone, in all probability the agent, to whom he sold the papers, and got himself thrown out of the railway carriage for his pains.
I disagree with you, my dear Watson. His body fell from the roof of the carriage where it had been placed. Cadogan West met his death elsewhere.
The roof of the train?
Consider the facts, Watson. A, the curve in the tracks. The body is found at a spot where the train pitches and sways as it comes around the points. B, there was no ticket. C, there were no signs of bleeding on the line because the body had bled elsewhere.
Of course. Everything fits together, but where was the body placed on the train?
I think I can make a fair guess at that, my dear Watson. Here we are. This is the famous official villa of Sir James Walter. And that, if I'm not mistaken, is his brother, Colonel Valentine, just coming out of the house.
What's the matter with the man? He looks positively haunted.
Oh, pardon me, Colonel Valentine, but can you tell me if Sir James is at home?
Sir James, sir? Sir James is dead.
Good heavens, dead?
He died this morning. It's terrible. Terrible.
How did he die?
Oh, it's this horrible scandal. My brother, sir, was very sensitive of his honor. He couldn't survive the disgrace to his department. It broke his heart. Pardon me, gentlemen, I must go. It broke his heart.
Most appalling development. Eh, Holmes?
I wonder if his death was natural, or if the poor fellow killed himself.
Yes?
Will you tell Miss Westbury that Mr. Sherlock Holmes would like to see her?
Oh, please come in, gentlemen. I'm Violet Westbury, Mr. Holmes. I've been expecting you ever since I heard you had taken the case. Please be seated.
Well, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, we must save his good name. He couldn't have done it. Cadogan was the most chivalrous, patriotic gentleman on earth. He couldn't have done it. He would have cut his right hand off rather than sell a state secret.
But the facts, my dear Miss Westbury.
I admit I can't explain them.
Was he in need of money?
No, Mr. Holmes. His need was simple and his salary very good. He'd saved several £100s. We were to be married at the new year.
I see. Had you noticed any signs of mental excitement?
Why, Well, that is...
Come, Miss Westbury, be frank with us.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. That night, I had a feeling that there was something on his mind.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about it, will you?
We were on the way to the theater. It was a foggy night, you remember? We were walking slowly. Our way took us close to his office. Cadogan seemed thoughtful and worried. Darling, what's the matter? You haven't said a word for the last 5 minutes. Have I said or done something?
Of course not, silly. It's just that I've got something on my mind.
Well, why not tell me about it? Perhaps I can help.
It's no use, Vi. It's too serious for me to talk about, even to you.
You know, sometimes, Caddy, I feel just the least little bit jealous of that old job of yours when you're cooped up in that building all day.
Oh, no, you're not going to be jealous of a building.
Well, not really. But it is funny to think of a husband having secrets he can't tell his wife.
Mighty important secrets, I can promise you. There's one in particular that any foreign spy would pay good money to get hold of.
How thrilling.
Well, I don't know. They're awfully slack about some things over there in that building, Violet. What's too slack? It would be too confounded easy for a traitor to get his hands on those plans.
What plans?
Never mind, darling. I guess I'm getting a bit melodramatic. But there's something been worrying me. Hello, what's that?
What's what?
Over there, that shadow moving along the side of the building. It's a man. So that's it. I always suspected...
Oh, what's the matter? You're so excited. What's wrong?
Stay here, Violet. There's something I have to find out. Stay here.
I waited and waited, but he never returned. Oh, Mr. Holmes, if you could only save his honor, it meant so much to him.
We shall do our best, Miss Westbury. This shadow, this man moving along the building. Did you see it, too?
I think I did, Mr. Holmes. But the night was so foggy, I can't be sure. But there must have been a man. Another man. It couldn't have been Cadogan. Surely character goes for something.
Let us hope so. Come along, Watson. We must return home. I'm expecting an answer to some telegrams I sent Mycroft earlier this afternoon. We've done enough for one day.
Holmes, where have you been all day? You left this morning before I was up. Now you've come home with your towel awry, your suit torn, and as ravenous as a wolf.
Yes, I've had a bit of exercise, my dear Watson. Pass me the tongue, will you? It would have done you good to go along.
Yes, well, what were you doing?
Investigating the premises inhabited by foreign spies known to have been in London on last Monday. Mycroft sent me a list of them. Took a bit of doing, too. Climbing walls, breaking into cellars, prowling around rooftops.
Well?
I discovered there was only one residence which had the proper facilities for disposing of West's body after the murder.
Well, whose residence was that?
It belongs to a Hugo Oberstein. The address is 13 Caulfield Gardens, Kensington. The gentleman himself has departed for Europe.
Gone, has he? And he took the plans with him. It's too late.
Not necessarily, Watson.
What can we do now?
We're going to keep a rendezvous with the gentleman who stole and sold those plans. The assignation will take place at Mr. Oberstein's house this evening at 9.
What the deuce are you talking about?
These newspaper clippings. I found them in the drawer of Hugo Oberstein's desk. Read them.
The Daily Telegraph agony column. The first one says, too complex for description, must have full report, terms agreed to, payable when goods delivered. Signed, Piero. Piero, indeed. Sounds like a Mardi Gras.
Read on, Watson, read on.
Second goes, matter presses, must withdraw offer unless contract completed. Piero again.
And the last, dated Monday, the day the crime was committed.
Monday night after 9, 2 taps, payment in hard cash. I say, do you think it was a submarine that the plans that he was buying?
I'm almost positive. And Piero was Oberstein himself. But we'll find out for certain this evening. I've invited the gentleman who sold the papers to meet us.
How? I don't understand.
And so did this advertisement in today's Daily Telegraph. Tonight, same hour, same place, 2 taps, vitally important. Your own safety at stake. Signed, Piero, as usual.
By George, if he answers that, we've got him.
Unless we're too late. Come along, Watson. There's no time to lose. You can take this package for a change. I've been carrying it around all day.
What's in it?
Oh, just a jemmy, a dark lantern, a chisel, and a revolver.
Nice equipment for a respectable citizen to be carrying about the streets of London, I must say.
Yeah, you know, Watson, there are times when I suspect we aren't quite respectable. Here we are. This is Caulfield Gardens.
Thank heavens, it's still foggy. I shouldn't like to be caught in the act of housebreaking.
Yeah. Over this wall, Watson. There's a window we can easily pry open in the back.
Scale that wall?
Come on, hurry up. There's no time to lose. Here. I'll give you a boost. Come on, up you. That's it. Look out, here I come.
I must say, Holmes, you're as agile as a cat. It's uncanny.
This is the window. Light the lantern and give me the jemmy. 1, 2.
Mr. Holmes, the underground runs right past here, almost on the level of these windows. I could have reached out and touched it.
Yes, quite convenient, wasn't it? It was here the body was placed on the roof of the train. Look on this windowsill. You can see the soot is blurred where they rested the body. And here, look. This brown stain is blood.
Nasty, eh, Holmes? Let's get on to the house.
Very well, then. Come along. The window's open. Easy, don't break the glass.
Supposing Obestein should happen to return home.
Well, we must take our chances in this business. Come along, Watson, come along. Our visitor will expect to be let in by the front door.
I wish these stairs didn't squeak so.
9 o'clock. We can expect him at any moment now. You take your position on one side of the door. I'll be on the other. So we can pounce on him when he enters. I'll throw my greatcoat over his head.
Oh, well, I wish he'd hurry.
Shh, Watson.
Oh, what if he doesn't come?
There he is. Ready now. I'll open the door.
You wanted me?
No, you don't. Take that.
Easy, Watson, easy.
All right, Holmes, I've got him.
Well, let's take a look at our catch. Take the overcoat away, Watson.
Right. Hi, it's Colonel Valentine Walter, St. James's brother.
Quite. Well, sir, what have you to say for yourself? Why did you steal the Bruce Partington plans?
Who are you? What do you know about this?
I am Sherlock Holmes, and I know everything.
Oh, this is terrible. I'm lost. I didn't realize their importance until my brother killed himself. But I needed the money. I had to have it. Obestein offered to give it to me if I'd let him see the plans.
So you took an impression of your brother's key, opened the safe, and procured the papers. Cadogan West saw you leaving the building, followed you here, and you killed him.
No, I didn't do that. I swear I didn't do it.
No? Then perhaps you'd better tell us who did murder Cadogan West and placed him on the roof of the railway carriage.
I'll tell you. I promise you I will. I did the rest. I confess it, but not that.
Very well, then. How did it happen?
I got the papers, as you've discovered. Made my way through the fog until I reached the door. Once or twice, I fancied I was being followed. I could hear footsteps on the pavement behind me.
Colonel Walter?
Yes?
You have the papers?
Yes. Let me in, quick. I think someone's been following me.
Yes, it's me.
Huh?
You can't do this, Valentine. It's treason.
All right, you hear?
No, you can't sell the papers, Valentine. I won't let you.
They should see.
Look out, West.
Take that. Oh. How do you like that, my impetuous young friend? Papa Obestein, he knows how to use a blackjack, eh?
You've killed him.
So?
It's murder. I'm going to get out of this.
Oh, no. I think different. You will come in here if you do not wish to taste the blackjack, too.
But
That is better.
Oh, what can we do? They'll find the body.
I have an idea. First, I look at those papers. I take the ones I want, and the rest we put in the pocket of this foolish young man. And then we give him a nice ride on top of the underground train, no? He will be the guilty one. Who will ever know?
What a thoroughly unpleasant gentleman. What a pity that he got away with the papers, Dr. Watson.
Oh, but he didn't. Obestein had left a Paris forwarding address with Colonel Walters. That gentleman sent him a letter dictated by Holmes, saying that he had discovered that one essential detail in the plans was missing, and that he had procured a tracing which would make it complete for a price.
And did Obestein swallow the bait?
Did he swallow it? He was arrested as he got off the boat at Folkestone. Some weeks later, I learned incidentally that Holmes had spent a day at Windsor Castle and returned with a remarkably fine emerald tie-pin. When I asked him where he got it, he answered it was just a small present from a certain gracious little old lady for whom he'd been able to do a small favor.
Yes, and I think I can guess the lady's august name.
Elementary, my dear Mr. Manning, elementary.
I see. Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, Dr. Watson will be back to tell us about next week's story. In the meantime, let us repeat. Watch out for colds. At the first sign of a cold, take Grove's bromoquinine tablets. Bromoquinine tablets are made especially for the relief of colds. In other words, they're specialized medication, and that's what you want. Yes, at the very first sneeze or sniffle, go right to your druggist and get a package of Grove's bromoquinine tablets. Now, Dr. Watson, next week?
Next week, I think I'll tell you the story of the lion's mane.
The lion's mane. What was that, Dr. Watson?
Well, the answer to that question, Mr. Manning, almost stumped Sherlock Holmes himself. Suffice it to say that they were the last words gasped out by a dying man as he lay writhing in agony on the sands of the Sussex coast.
You have been listening to a Sherlock Holmes adventure, adapted from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's story, The Bruce Partington Plans, with Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes and Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson. The dramatization was by Edith Miser. This program is presented from Hollywood every week at this same time by the makers of Grove's bromoquinine tablets. Quick relief for colds. This is Knox Manning speaking.
After several seasons as a Hollywood-based series, Holmes returned to the airwaves September 28, 1947 in a New York-based production with John Stanley starring as the Great Detective. Although his Holmesian tones were almost identical to the legendary Basil Rathbone's, Stanley was a far more polished radio performer, and his portrayal of Holmes was among the finest in history of the long-running series. Stanley had been born and raised in London, less than half a mile from Baker Street, and had relocated to the United States after 2 years on the London stage.
The makers of Clippercraft clothes for men and 1,203 leading retail stores from coast to coast present Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's immortal character, the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes, starring John Stanley. This week's adventure, the case of the unwelcome ambassador.
Really, my dear Watson, you're being most discourteous. We have a guest waiting outside. Fetch him.
But Holmes...
Go on, open the door. Bring him in.
There's hardly any reason for such haste. He can well afford to wait. It happens that our guest is a corpse.
And so once again we visit Dr. John Watson, who is at work on his memoirs.
Ah, Mr. Harris. Well, come in, sir, come in.
Thank you. How's your writing coming along, Dr. Watson?
Oh, splendidly. Sit down, my boy.
Thank you very much. Which of the famous Sherlock Holmes cases are you working on now?
Well, it's the case of the unwelcome ambassador. A very colorful affair involving a most undiplomatic murder.
I'm very anxious to hear about it, Dr. Watson.
And so you shall. But I am very anxious to hear from you first, Mr. Harris. The fall weather is upon us, and you must make some suggestions for my fall wardrobe.
Why, certainly. Many millions of America's best-dressed men have discovered Clippercraft, acknowledged to be the finest clothing value in America. Here's why. By a voluntary concentration of their enormous buying power, 1,203 of this country's finest independent stores from coast to coast provide Clippercraft's great tailoring plants with the advantages of steady, year-round operation, and pass along to you the savings that result from lowered manufacturing and distribution costs. That's why you're certain of getting more for your money in distinctive styling and skillful tailoring in fabrics of lasting good looks. You'll find an outstanding selection of smart new fall clothes by Clippercraft at the leading store in your community, at the store you can trust. Really expensive-looking Clippercraft suits at only $47.50, with some styles at only $40. Also, Clippercraft sport jackets at only $26.50, and Clippercraft top coats at only $40 and $45. Some with removable zip-in linings at only $47.50 and $52.50. Yes, compare Clippercraft with clothes selling for many dollars more. And now, Dr. Watson, who was the unwelcome ambassador?
This story, Mr. Harris, goes back to the days before my marriage, when Holmes and I shared 221B Baker Street together. We were returning from a Sarasota recital at St. James Hall. We were approaching our lodging in a hansom. It was rather late in the evening. This is 221B, driver. Driver, I say this is 221B. Holmes, he's passing it. He isn't stopping.
Obviously.
But how can you just sit there and do nothing whatsoever? Driver! Hello up there, driver. Stop at once, I say.
Sorry, Governor.
Either he's kidnapping us or he's insane.
Both fascinating prospects, Watson, so you suppose you regain your composure.
I hope you don't mind, Governor. I was told to... let me see now. To give you this.
What the devil?
Now, careful, Governor. Tain't a salt biscuit that's wrapped in that oilskin. Open her up, why don't you?
All right, let me see. Great Scott. It's a precious stone, a ruby.
Yes, fabulously valuable, my dear Watson. I should say from casual examination that it's the very rarest type. A pigeon's blood ruby, found only in the Mogok stone tract of Upper Burma. Of course, to be certain, one would require instruments.
Who gave this to you, driver?
Oh, please, Governor, you'll only confuse me. Now, let me see now. I'm to say the ruby's for you, Mr. Holmes. It's by way of an invitation to stay in me cab and allow me to drive you to the docks, where you're to board the good ship Java Belle.
Indeed. Well, I'd have none of it.
Oh, if you'll allow me to finish, Governor. I'm to say your safety aboard the Java Belle is guaranteed. You're just invited for a bit of a chat.
Oh. And who extends this curious invitation?
That, Governor, I'm not to say.
It's a trap, Holmes. I'm for commanding an about-face.
Not at all. Either our host is a gentleman of fantastic means whose plight is so desperate that he's been obliged to employ the ruby to attract us to his ship, or else he's a remarkably successful criminal, and the ruby is a mere trinket in his bag of loot. I anticipate making his acquaintance with relish. Faster, driver. We'll play your master's game.
Right up that gangway, gentlemen. He's in the cabin, what's all lit up on the main deck. You see it?
Thank you, driver. Shall we go aboard, Watson?
I say, it's a sinister-looking vessel, don't you think? There's all the aspects of a pirate ship.
This would be our host's cabin.
Come. Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson, you've accepted my invitation. I'm delighted. Be seated, won't you?
Thank you.
Huh? What's that?
I said thank you.
Now, sir, beyond the fact that you've spent considerable time in the tropics, that you've been in London for 6 days, and that you're an exporter of spices, what information do you wish to impart?
How on earth do you know all that?
The shipping page of the Globe listed the Java Belle as arriving 6 days ago, if I recall correctly, out of Macau, the Portuguese East Indies. As for your cargo, the odor of cinnamon aboard is inescapable. And it's clear that you've been in the tropics for some time because you suffer from a slight defect in your hearing, symptomatic of prolonged use of quinine.
You're quite right, Mr. Holmes. I do come from Macau. It is on the South China Sea, separated from China proper by an ancient wall. There you may see Maharajas of India and jeweled countesses of France mingling in its twisted streets with riffraff and scum from 100 ports. It is the most lawless city on earth. It's a legend.
I imagine your problem concerns Macau?
It does, sir. My problem concerns the newly arrived ambassador to England from Macau, Senor Ruiz.
Well, what of him, Mr.
Mr. Edwards, Watson. The Globe was also conscientious enough to list the owner of the Java Belle.
Mr. Holmes, the ambassador is about to be murdered.
What? Oh, how do you know?
There is a delicate political situation in Macau, Dr. Watson. Fanatic extremists would benefit greatly if the ambassador were to die. I have heard rumors that they have dispatched emissaries here to London to carry out the unpleasant task.
And you've sent for me to prevent the crime?
Exactly. If the ambassador should die, there would be an upheaval in the Indies. I should lose control of my export business, an immeasurable loss. You may consider that ruby a gesture on my part, Holmes. Keep it with my compliments. And besides, you may name your own fee. I have but one proviso.
Pray continue.
Our understanding must be absolutely confidential. That's why I had you brought here. I did not want to be seen entering your flat. It would add to the unfortunate rumors already circulating in London about the ambassador.
Are you personally acquainted with him?
Oh, we've met, social occasions, tea in Hong Kong, military ball in Ceylon, that sort of thing.
What is his address?
2 Lancaster Gate.
Does the ambassador know of the threat to his life?
Certainly, but he refuses a bodyguard. Deeply ingrained sense of Oriental fatalism.
When did you last see him?
Oh, it's been months. 3 at least. I take it you'll accept the case, Holmes?
Definitely.
Then, if and when you discover the would-be killer, please turn him over to Scotland Yard before revealing his identity to me.
By Jove, that's a strange request.
Dr. Watson, I feel the man who would deprive me of my industrial empire should suffer. But I want him to suffer legally. If he were to fall into my hands personally, I am a collector of strange Oriental objects. Some of them include torture devices beyond Western man's imagination. I could not resist using them.
Now, my dear Watson, I shall have a pipe and consider.
Oh, dear. Visitors at this hour?
Welcome visitors, Watson. If they arrive at this late hour, it must be on an intriguing mission. Oh, remind me to enter Mr. Edwards in my index.
Edwards. I don't care for that man, Holmes. The ship bespeaks the man, you know, and the Java Belle is a saucy, wicked lady of the sea.
Come in.
Mr. Holmes.
Let me tell him, Philip. Mr.
Easy,
Holmes.
my dear girl, easy. Suppose we begin with a proper introduction.
Yes, but we're desperate. We can't wait.
This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
Mr. Holmes,
My dear young lady, if you'll remove your cape, the mud on it's dripping to the floor, and Mrs. Hudson, our housekeeper, will be furious in the morning.
We mustn't lose a second.
Your coat, sir, it's in the same deplorable condition as the young lady's.
Oh, very well. I'm Philip Randall. This is Edith Norton. I'm secretary to Ambassador Ruiz from Macau.
Aha.
Edith and I were out for the evening.
Where?
The theater. Then we decided to walk to her place through Regent's Park. We were by the lake.
And we saw a body floating in the lake. It was horrible.
I recognized the face of the corpse. It was the ambassador. I refused to send for the police.
Philip's afraid the ambassador's death will create international complications. He didn't think we could persuade Scotland Yard to keep the awful news a secret.
The body was floating close to the edge of the lake. I could reach it. We pulled it on shore.
We hailed a cab. Philip bribed the cabbie to keep his mouth shut. We managed to place the dead body in the hansom.
Where is the corpse now?
Propped up in the cab, right outside this door.
Good heavens.
How very crude. Fetch him inside. It's rather chilly tonight, and we have a nice warm fire here. Watson, give young Randall a hand. Bring the late ambassador in here where I may have a look at him.
Come along, Randall. We two can manage. But hurry, you can't just leave him there.
I must apologize for my disheveled appearance, Mr. Holmes. May I remove my hat and straighten my hair?
Certainly. Did you know the late ambassador, Miss Norton?
Yes, I'd been out with him a few times.
Was he fond of you?
Yes.
Terribly?
Very.
Propose?
Oh, no.
Oh, you have a piece of confetti in your hair.
Here?
That's it. And a speck of mud on your neck. That's better. How did you regard the ambassador?
Why, I adored one. He was a darling.
Does young Randall stand to profit by his employer's death?
Well, I don't want to place Philip in a difficult position, but there was talk that the ambassador was somehow preventing Philip from receiving a vital diplomatic post.
According to the social columns, Miss Norton, which I read solely to remain au courant, and with extreme distaste, the late ambassador was not your sole darling.
I resent that, Mr. Holmes. If a girl cannot be popular without having people...
Here's the body. Easy, Randall.
Yes, but...
Place the ambassador in my armchair. It's most comfortable.
That's it.
Handsome, wasn't he?
Really, Holmes, your macabre sense of
Yes.
humor is...
Bullet wound in his back. He was shot, then pushed into the lake. Watson, the bullet wound of entrance is at the 6th left intercostal space. Path of the bullet, oblique, downward.
Mr. Holmes, what shall we do?
Since it's extremely late, Miss Norton, if I were you, and I'd ask my escort to see me home.
But the body, we...
Our lodging is not what I would term extravagantly commodious. But I believe we can accommodate the cadaver as a guest, temporarily.
Shall we come tomorrow? How will we know what...
You must be exhausted, Miss Norton. Good night. Good night, Mr. Randall.
Mr. Holmes, if you'd only let us know
Good night.
Well, I must say you might have handled the two youngsters with less effrontery, Holmes.
We haven't time for the amenities.
Randall,
I beg your pardon.
Did you forget something?
No. Edith's gone downstairs. I just stole back because I have a suggestion. It's about a man named Jack Singh.
And why are you telling us about him?
Well, he knew the ambassador quite well. He's an incredible chap, a mixture of Chinese, Malay, British. He spent a good deal of time in Macau at the gambling tables.
Where is this Singh?
In Limehouse. He operates a gambling spot there. There was talk of a wager he'd made on the mathematical chances of the ambassador's being assassinated. You might look into it, Mr. Holmes. Well, I must run. Good night.
Now, why would young Randall want to keep Miss Norton from hearing that?
You're wasting time in idle speculation, Watson.
Well, perhaps. Holmes, why are you putting on your coat?
Because we're off to Limehouse, Watson. I must meet this gentleman who equates mathematics with death.
Well, Dr. Watson, Jack Singh sounds like a very intriguing suspect. There should be a wealth of clues in visiting him in Limehouse.
Should there, Mr. Harris?
Well, I may be wrong about that. Of course, I'm always right about another subject, though, Doctor.
And from that sparkle in your eye, Mr. Harris, I deduce that you're about to discuss your favorite subject. And a favorite of mine, too. Clippercraft clothes.
That's right, Dr. Watson. There's no mystery about this country's most sensational clothing value. You see, there's a great big American idea behind Clippercraft. The famous Clippercraft Plan. Now, this plan gives you the benefit of group purchasing because it concentrates the vast buying power of 1,203 of this country's leading stores from coast to coast. It gives you the opportunity of purchasing truly fine Clippercraft clothes at your local independent store in which you enjoy really friendly, courteous service. You know how much that means when you're buying clothes. And Clippercraft clothes are correctly cut and tailored of superb long-wearing materials. And the savings. Fine Clippercraft suits cost only $47.50 with selections at $40, too. Clippercraft topcoats cost only $40 and $45. Featured are several models with removable zip-in linings at only $47.50 and $52.50. And Clippercraft sport jackets are only $26.50. That's why men who know insist on Clippercraft clothes. So be sure to visit the Clippercraft store in your city.
These leading stores in the metropolitan area are proud to add their names to Clippercraft in your suits, topcoats, and sport jackets. In Manhattan, Saks 34th, Broadway at 34th. John Wanamaker Men's Stores, Broadway at 8th and 67 Liberty Street. In Brooklyn, Abraham and Straus. In Newark, New Jersey, Boulevard Men's Shop, Kresge, Newark. And in Jamaica, the B&B Clothes Shop, 16408 Jamaica Avenue.
And now, shall we return to our story, Mr. Harris?
Oh, by all means, Dr. Watson.
Very well, then. Holmes and I dashed into a hansom and soon reached Limehouse. The streets were too crowded for a horse and carriage, so we were obliged to go the last portion of the way to Jack Singh's gambling establishment on foot. I say, Holmes, what sort of celebration is this?
Limehouse is celebrating the Chinese New Year, Watson.
This confetti gets all over one's clothes. The blasted noise is deafening.
We shall escape it in a moment. There's the building that houses Jack Singh's gambling establishment.
Yes, so it is. And Lord knows what will become of us in there. It's probably swarming with criminals. And murderers.
I regret the necessity of disturbing your game, Mr. Singh.
Not at all, Mr. Holmes. I am delighted that you have brought the news of the ambassador's death. It is magnificent news.
Well, I must confess, Mr. Singh, you have a curious attitude. Not even a trace of regret?
Dr. Watson, my interest in the ambassador was purely professional.
What was the nature of the wager you made regarding his death?
I heard rumors that fanatics were planning to kill him. So I took a chance. I have wagered on the turn of a card. Why should I not wager on a twist of fate? I visited Lloyd's.
Oh, yes, and you purchased assassination insurance, I venture to say.
Exactly.
What on earth is assassination insurance?
A policy of Lloyd's, my dear Watson. The original policy was issued on the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. Lloyd's underwrites the sudden death of any illustrious personage as a protection to businessmen who might suffer substantial losses.
I paid a premium on the life of the ambassador. Now he is dead. I have won another wager. I have again guessed the correct number on the wheel.
From your highly pleased demeanor, Mr. Singh, I should say you've won a gigantic sum.
I have. I am quite frank about it.
Mr. Singh, when did you last see the ambassador?
10 days ago.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Good night, gentlemen. You may use that side door going out.
Good evening,
Goodbye, Mr. Singh.
Where to now, Holmes?
To the ambassador's residence.
But young Randall said the place is deserted. There won't be a soul there.
Precisely why we shall pay it a visit, Watson.
Randall told you no one's at home here at the ambassador's, Holmes.
Then we're obliged to enter the ambassador's home in unorthodox fashion, Watson.
And how might that be?
The window. These absurd English window fasteners won't delay us. This way. Shall we try this window? Superb. Opens in a jiffy. Up she goes. After me, Watson. Leap over the sill. So.
Righto. There we are.
I wish to see the ambassador's study first. This way. Tiptoe, Watson, tiptoe.
Sorry.
This is the study. Here is the ambassador's desk. His papers. Like that small lamp, Watson.
Wait a minute, Holmes. Shh. I hear someone.
Uh-huh. The late diplomat has another visitor at the front door.
Who could it be?
Step behind this clothes horse with me. Good.
I can see the front door. Someone stepped in. Tall, thin chap. He's lighting a candle. Wait a minute. He's holding the candle toward his face. Why, it's young Randall.
Quiet, Watson. I have already examined those papers, Randall. You'll find them rather dull.
Holmes. Shall I send for the police, Holmes?
No. Don't do that. Please. Really, I haven't done anything. I just came back to...
You were the ambassador's secretary. Therefore, you made use of your pass key to return and have a look at his private papers. Papers he undoubtedly never allowed you to see.
Yes, I was hoping to find out who killed him on my own.
Confound it, man. It appears to me as though you killed him.
But I didn't, I tell you. Why don't you ask Edwards who killed him?
Oh, no. You can't avoid suspicion by accusing someone else,
But
Randall.
I've told you all I know. Edith Norton and I found the body in Regent's Park Lake. I had not seen the ambassador for a week. He had taken a week to relax. Edith told me that she had not seen him in a few days herself.
A few days?
Yes.
Are you quite certain Miss Norton stated she had not seen the ambassador for a few days?
Quite. 2 days, she said.
Watson, have you your army revolver?
Yes.
You'll have need of it.
Oh, where are we off to now?
Back to Limehouse. The pieces of the puzzle fit together neatly. But we must hurry. If we're too late, Jack Singh will have killed Edith Norton.
I'd hoped by now the Chinese would have finished celebrating their New Year. You think we'll get through this crowd in time, Holmes?
We must, Watson.
That poor girl will be dead, and we shall be to blame.
This corner. It's not far now. Your revolver ready?
Yes, ready, Holmes. I'd keep up with you, but the old wound, you know, my leg.
This is the side entrance.
Someone is purposely not answering. Knock again, Holmes.
Open! Open, I say! Open, or we shall shoot the lock off.
Holmes.
Yes, Mr. Singh. Good evening, Miss Norton.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, I'm
Mr.
so
Singh,
glad to
I'm
see you.
obliged to detain you with this revolver until we fetch the police to charge you with the murder of the ambassador.
Oh, not quite, Watson. Actually, the ambassador was killed by you, Miss Norton.
Why, that's
Quiet,
preposterous.
Go on, Holmes.
When you first arrived at Baker Street, Miss Norton, there was almost imperceptible bit of confetti in your hair.
What of it?
Exactly. The question occurred to me, of course. I had the answer when I first visited Limehouse tonight. The Chinese have filled the air with confetti. You remarked about it, Watson. Therefore, I knew Miss Norton must have been in Limehouse earlier this evening, before her engagement with young Randall, since he said they'd only attended the theater.
And so you knew, Holmes, that she was in this with Mr. Singh.
That doesn't prove that I killed the ambassador.
Patience, dear girl. Everyone who could have done away with the ambassador said they hadn't seen him in at least a week. In one case, not for 3 months. But you claim to have seen him just 2 days ago, Miss Norton.
I did.
That's not the truth. It's utterly impossible for you to have seen the ambassador alive in the past 48 hours. I believe Dr. Watson will support the authenticity of my medical information in this instance. The ambassador's body was found floating in Regent's Park Lake, and it requires a minimum of 5 days in the water for a human body to become sufficiently buoyant to float.
You have a home.
We will collect a great deal from Lloyd's, Mr. Holmes. If you would forget this, you might...
Yes. And you, Mr. Singh. You purchased a weighty premium guaranteeing the ambassador's life. But you wanted to wager to be a certainty. You could not commit the crime yourself. You required the services of someone familiar with the ambassador's habits here in London. Someone who knew him intimately, who would be with him alone and often. So you made arrangements with Miss Norton, a ruthlessly ambitious young lady who's striven desperately to marry into wealth.
Why, of all the nothing...
I hurried here because I realized that now that the money is forthcoming, Mr. Singh might decide to do away with you, dear girl. Why should he share it now the work is done?
Keep your hand out of that drawer, Mr. Singh. Don't reach for your gun.
Jack!
Oh.
Jack!
Oh.
Worthy marksmanship, Watson. Merely a shoulder wound, Mr. Singh. Try not to look as though you'd been mortally wounded. You too, Miss Norton. That expression of despair is most unbecoming. I suggest you save your melodramatic performances. Scotland Yard will provide the perfect stage for them soon enough, with a well-constructed gallows. Oh, I did forget. A Happy New Year, Mr. Singh. A Happy New Year, Miss Norton.
Well, Dr. Watson, the case of the unwelcome ambassador was very intriguing. Now, may we have advance information about next week's adventure?
Mr. Harris, I've called it The Black Guardsman of Braddock Castle. I can see him now, standing on the north tower of the castle, black against the red sun, an axe on his shoulder, looking down and laughing at his work.
Well, what work?
Murder, Mr. Harris. Murder.
Well, we shall certainly be knocking at the door of your study next week, Dr. Watson, to see the Black Guardsman at work. The makers of Clippercraft Clothes and 1,203 leading stores from coast to coast have brought you another in the new series of broadcasts featuring the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Our stories are based upon the character Sherlock Holmes, created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and the program is produced and directed by Basil Lochran. Sherlock Holmes is played by John Stanley, Dr. Watson by Ian Martin. This week's story was written by Howard Merrill, special music by Albert Berman. you don't know your Clippercraft dealer, write Clippercraft, 200 Fifth Avenue, New York City. Be sure to listen next week to Sherlock Holmes in The Black Guardsman of Braddock Castle. This is Cy Harris speaking for Clippercraft Clothes. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
The Solitary Cyclist is the 10th episode of the British radio series Sherlock Holmes, made by Radio 4, produced by Roger Pine, adapted and directed by Michael Bakewell, first aired on the 6th of August 1978, starring Barry Foster as Sherlock Holmes and David Buck as Dr. Watson. The show is adapted from the Arthur Conan Doyle's short story, The Adventure of the Solitary Cyclist, 1904.
Sherlock Holmes. We present Barry Foster as Sherlock Holmes and David Buck as Dr. Watson in a new dramatization of the short stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The Solitary Cyclist, dramatized by Michael Bakewell, with Miriam Margolyes as Violet Smith.
You observe, Watson, that characteristic little twitch on the rear leg of the letter H, you see?
Oh, good Lord, yes.
Now, if we compare it with the letter written to John Harden from Cricklewood on October the 21st. Here. Oh, no. This is intolerable. Be a good chap, Watson, and send the fellow away.
Mr. Holmes? Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
No, madam, my name is Watson.
Mr. Watson, it is vital.
Doctor Watson. I fear that Mr. Holmes is not...
Mr. Holmes!
Madam!
I must talk to you.
I cannot be disturbed, madam.
I need your advice, Mr. Holmes, your help.
I am endeavoring to unravel the persecution of a tobacco millionaire. I cannot give my mind to anything else.
You must listen to me, Mr. Holmes. There is no one else I can turn to.
Indeed. Well, since it would be ungracious to attempt to remove you by force, you had better sit down.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
At least it cannot be your health. So ardent a cyclist must be full of energy.
But how could you possibly...
My friend has doubtless observed a slight roughening on the side of the sole of your shoe, caused by the friction of the edge of your pedal.
Dr. Watson has had the privilege of observing my methods for many years.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I do bicycle a great deal, as it happens, and that has something to do with my visit today.
May I see your hand? You will excuse me, I'm sure it is my business.
Surely you are not a palmist, Mr. Holmes?
I nearly fell into the error of supposing that you used a typewriter. Of course it is music. You see the spatulate finger end, Watson. It is common to both professions. There is a spirituality about the face, however, which the typewriter does not generate. The lady is a musician.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. I teach music.
In the country, I presume, to judge from your complexion.
Yes, sir. Near Farnham, on the borders of Surrey.
A beautiful neighborhood. Now, what has happened to you near Farnham, on the borders of Surrey?
My name is Violet Smith. My father used to conduct the orchestra at the old Imperial Theatre.
Wilfrid Smith.
He died 2 years ago, Mr. Holmes.
I'm sorry to hear it.
My mother and I were left without a relation in the world, except for my uncle, Rafe Smith, who went to Africa 25 years ago. We never heard a word from him. Then, one day, there was an advertisement in the Times inquiring our whereabouts. We were so excited, we thought someone had left us a fortune.
But this was not the case?
No, Mr. Holmes. We went to a lawyer's, where we met 2 gentlemen, Mr. Carruthers and Mr. Woodley.
who were on a visit from South Africa. They were friends of my uncle's. He had died in poverty in Johannesburg, and with his last breath he had asked them to see that we were in no want.
Curious. For a man who had given no thought to you in his lifetime.
They said he felt responsible for us after the death of my father. Mr. Woodley seemed to me to be quite odious. He was coarse and puffy-faced with a red moustache and a great opinion of himself. Mr. Carruthers was much older but more agreeable. He inquired how we were left, and when we told him that we were very poor, he suggested that I should come and teach music to his only daughter, aged 10. He offered me £100 a year, which was splendid pay.
And you took the position?
I didn't want to leave my mother on her own, but he suggested that I should go home every weekend, so I ended up by accepting. He was a widower. There was a very respectable elderly housekeeper, and Mr. Carruthers' little daughter was such an absolute dear that everything seemed to be splendid.
And then?
Mr. Woodley came down to stay for a week. It seemed like 3 months. He was a dreadful person, a bully to everyone else, but to me, something infinitely worse. He made odious love to me, boasted of his wealth, and said that if I married him, I would have the finest diamonds in London. When at last he saw I would have nothing to do with him, he seized me in his arms. He was hideously strong, and tried to kiss me. Mr. Carruthers came in and tore him away, and Mr. Woodley knocked him down and cut his face open. And that was the end of his visit, as you can imagine. I was horrified. What if Cyril had found out?
Cyril?
Cyril Morton, an electrical engineer. We hope to be married at the end of the year. I'm sorry, I seem to have strayed from the point.
Pray continue.
Well, now comes the thing I wanted to talk to you about. I told you that every weekend I go home to see my mother. I ride from Chiltern Grange, that's where Mr. Carruthers lives, and catch the 12:20 from Farnham Station. It is a lonely road, particularly the mile or so past Charlington Hall, where you never see a soul. You couldn't find a more lonely tract of road anywhere, and it is quite rare to meet so much as a cart or a peasant, until you reach the high road near Crooksbury Hill. 2 weeks ago, I was on the loneliest part of the road when I looked behind me and saw a man on a bicycle. He had a short, dark beard. I looked back before I reached Farnham, but the man was gone, and I thought no more about it. But you can imagine how surprised I was, Mr. Holmes, when on my return on the Monday, I saw the same man on the same stretch of road. The same thing happened again the following Saturday and Monday. He always kept his distance and did not molest me in any way, but it certainly seemed very odd. I mentioned it to Mr. Carruthers, who said he would order a dog-cart.
Have they nothing at the house?
No, Mr. Holmes, nothing at all.
How very peculiar. Go on.
For some reason, the dog-cart was not delivered. So this morning, I had to cycle to the station again.
And what happened?
As I reached Charlington Heath, there he was again. He always kept so far from me that I could not see his face, but it was certainly someone I did not know. The only thing I could see clearly was his beard. Let's try slowing down. He's slowing down too. Let's stop. He stopped too, but he's just too far away. If I try going very fast round the next corner and then stop suddenly, I'll get a look at him as he goes past. He's gone. He's vanished into thin air.
This case certainly presents some features of its own. He could not have retreated down the road?
I could see it for a clear mile. He was not on it.
No side roads?
None.
And then he must have taken a footpath on one side or the other.
Not on the side of the heath. I should have seen him.
And on the other side?
That's Charlington Hall. It stands in its own grounds.
And then by a process of elimination, we arrive at the fact that he made his way there. Where is the man to whom you're engaged?
He is in the Midland Electric Company at Coventry.
He would not pay you a surprise visit.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, as if I should not know him.
Have you had any other admirers?
Several. Before I met Cyril.
Ah. And since?
There was that dreadful man Woodley, if you can call him an admirer.
No one else?
It's hard to say. It may be a mere fancy, but it seems to me sometimes that my employer, Mr. Carruthers, takes a great deal of interest in me. He has never said anything and is a perfect gentleman, but a girl always knows.
What does he do for a living?
He is a rich man.
With no carriage, nor horses?
Well, at least he is fairly well-to-do. He goes into the city 2 or 3 times a week. He is deeply interested in South African gold shares.
Well, Miss Smith, I am very busy just now.
Yes.
But I will find time to make a few inquiries into your case. You will let me know of any fresh developments.
Of course, Mr. Holmes.
In the meantime, take no step without letting me know. Goodbye, and I trust that we shall have nothing but good news from you. It is a part of the settled order of nature that such a girl should have followers, but for choice, not on bicycles in lonely country lanes. There are curious and suggestive details about the case, Watson.
Or that the man should appear only at that point.
Exactly. Our first effort must be to find out who are the tenants of Charlington Hall. And I'm fascinated by these two men, Carruthers and Woodley, such very different types. How came they both to be looking up Rafe Smith's relations? One more point. What sort of a household is it which pays double the market price for a governess, but does not keep a horse, although 6 miles from the station? Odd, Watson, very odd.
You will go down there?
No, my dear fellow, you will go down. This may be merely some trifling intrigue, and I cannot break my other important research because of it. On Monday, you will arrive at Farnham. You will conceal yourself near Charlington Heath and act as your judgment advises. Ah, is that you, Watson?
An excellent day, Holmes. Most rewarding.
You know, Watson, I'm more than ever convinced that the letter posted in Lewisham on September the 3rd is not by the hand of the Dulwich postcard. Oh, but of course, my dear fellow, I'd quite forgot. You've been to the borders of Surrey. Sit yourself down and give me a report.
Well, I caught the 9:13 from Waterloo in order to be in position when our young lady arrived. I found Charlington Heath without any difficulty and concealed myself. And then I saw the mysterious cyclist.
Excellent.
He was wearing a dark suit, and I could see that he had a black beard. When he reached the end of the grounds by Charlington Hall, he dismounted and went through a gap in the hedge. After a quarter of an hour, I saw our young lady cycling back from the station. As she got to the Charlington hedge, she looked about her. The moment she passed, the fellow with the black beard appeared from the hedge and went after her on his bicycle. She looked back at him and slowed her pace. He slowed also. She stopped, and he stopped. There were about 200 yards between them. Then she did a really splendid thing.
Really? Pray tell me.
She whisked her bicycle round and rode straight at him. But he was too quick for her, and he fled off again down the road. She gave up the chase and cycled back again. This time she didn't turn her head.
And did you see the cyclist again?
Oh, yes. After a time he came back very slowly and turned in by the hall gate. He got off his bicycle and seemed to be adjusting his necktie. Then he rode away down the drive towards the hall.
And then what happened?
I walked back to Farnham. I called in at a local house agent, but he knew nothing about Charlington Hall. He referred me to a firm in Pall Mall.
And so you went there?
Yes, I pretended I wanted the hall for the summer. but I was too late. It had been let a month ago to a Mr. I have it here somewhere. Mr. Williamson. Yeah, evidently a respectable elderly gentleman. So, there you are.
You really have done remarkably badly, Watson. Did you get a close look at the mysterious cyclist?
I saw him clearly enough.
How close were you?
I was behind a clump of gorse about 200 yards away.
You should have hidden in the hedge.
But how?
Then you would have had a close view of this interesting person as it is. You can tell me even less than Miss Smith. She thinks she does not know the man. I'm convinced she does. Why, otherwise, should he be so desperately anxious that she should not get so near him as to see his features? And then, when you want to find out about the inhabitants of the hall, you go to a London house agent.
Oh, what should I have done?
Gone to the nearest public house, of course. That's the centre of country gossip. They would have told you every name in the household, from the master to the kitchen maid. But what have we gained from your expedition? The knowledge that the girl's story is true. I never doubted it. That the hall is tenanted by an old man called Williamson. Who's the better for that?
Dash it all, Holmes.
My dear fellow, don't look so depressed. I would quite like a little expedition to Farnham myself. I should be none the worse for a quiet, peaceful day in the country.
Mr. Williamson, the old fellow with the white beard. People say he used to be a clergyman.
Really? Oh, I'll have another glass, if you please, landlord, and one for yourself.
Oh, thank you, sir. Mind you, he don't look like a clergyman. He don't talk like a clergyman either. No. I tell you, his language would raise a few eyebrows in this bar.
Thank you.
Your health, sir. Oh, they're a warm lot up at the hall, sir. Visitors every weekend. Now, there's one gentleman in particular, a Mr. Woodley, is a fellow with a great red moustache. Oh, he's a lively feller, I can tell you. Why, only the other day he... Mr. Woodley, good to see you, sir. What'll it be?
I was in the tap room. I heard every word. Who the devil are you, and why are you asking so many questions? Get your dirty frying
It was delicious, Watson. A straight left against a slugging ruffian. They took him home in a cart. I sustained only a cut lip and a trifling lump on my forehead.
Yes, I'll see to that in a moment.
But I fear that my day out on the Surrey border has been no more profitable than your own.
There has been a letter from Miss Smith, posted yesterday evening. She is leaving Mr. Carruthers' employment. Seems that he proposed marriage to her.
Which she, like a sensible girl, declined.
It seems he took her refusal very seriously, although he was perfectly decent about it. But she caught sight of your friend Woodley again, slinking round the shrubbery.
Well, he won't slink again for a day or two.
She's leaving this Saturday. Here, I have the letter here. Even the high pay cannot reconcile me to the discomforts of my situation. On Saturday I come up to town and do not intend to return. Mr. Carruthers has got a trap, and so the dangers of the lonely road, if there ever were any dangers, are now over.
So I trust, Watson, so I trust. Nevertheless, I think it is our duty to see that no one molests her on her last journey.
Are you sure you're not taking it all too seriously, Holmes? I mean, it's all very grotesque and bizarre, I grant you, but is it really dangerous?
That, my dear Watson, is not for us to judge.
I mean, it's not exactly unheard of for a fellow to lie in wait for a pretty girl and to follow after her. If he's got so little pluck that he daren't even speak to her, I mean, the fellow actually fled off down the road when she turned round. He can't be very formidable.
I wish that I could share your bland appraisal of the situation, Watson. I am convinced that there is some deep intrigue going on around that little woman. I think that we must spare time to run down there together on Saturday morning and make sure that nothing untoward takes place. And you would do well to bring your revolver with you.
do we have to go at such a pace, Holmes?
Oh, forgive me, Watson. I'd forgotten you were not in training. I've allowed a margin of half an hour. The chimneys of Charlington Hall are already in sight.
Look, there's something coming. Looks like a dog cart.
If that is her trap, she must be making for the earlier train. She'll be past Charlington before we can possibly get there. Come on. Seems to be going at an unholy pace. My God, Watson, it's empty. It's abduction, Watson, murder, God knows what. Block the road, stop the horse. Stop it! Oh, go on! There. That's it now. Up you get. Now, let's make for the hall.
Holmes! That's him! Ahead of us there on the road, that's our cyclist.
God, he's going like a racer. We'll soon overtake him.
He's seen us, Holmes. He's going to block the road.
Stop there! Stop! Pull up! Pull up, by George, or I'll put a bullet into your horse.
Take the reins, Watson. I'll get down.
Where the devil did you get that cart?
You're the man we want to see. Where is Miss Violet Smith?
That's what I'm asking you.
We met the dog cart on the road. There was nobody in it. We drove back to see what had become of her.
Then they've got her. That hellhound Woodley and the blackguard Parson.
What?
Come on, man. They'll have taken her to the hall.
Come on, Watson. Oh.
This is where they came through. This way.
There's someone in the bush. Hey, stop!
It's Peter, the groom. He drove her. The brutes must have pulled him up and clubbed him. Well, we can't do him any good. But we may yet save her from the worst fate that can befall a woman. Come on.
Hold hard a minute. They didn't go to the house. Here are their marks on the left by the laurel bushes.
This way. They're in the bowling alley. Oh, the cowardly dogs. We're too late. The devil's putting away his prayer book.
They're married.
You can take that beard off, Bob Carruthers. I know you well enough. You and your pals have come at the right time. You can be the first to kiss my bride.
I'll see this woman righted if I have to swing for it. I told you what I would do if you molested her.
You're too late. She's my wife.
No, she's your widow.
You interfering swine! I'll get you!
He's got a gun! So have I. Drop that pistol, Henry Williamson. Watson, pick it up. Hold it to his head. And I'll have your pistol too, Mr. Carruthers. We'll have no more violence.
Who are you, then?
My name is Sherlock Holmes.
Good Lord.
Ah, you've heard of me, then. I will represent the official police until their arrival. You and Williamson carry Woodley into the house. Look after the young lady, Watson.
I demand to know by what right you hold us here.
That we can resolve when the police arrive from Farnham. Ah, well, Watson, and how is our bridegroom?
He will live. I'll finish him.
Stay where you are, Carruthers.
Do you tell me that that girl is to be tied to roaring Jack Woodley for life?
You need not concern yourself about that. There are two very good reasons why she should under no circumstances be his wife. In the first place, we are very safe in questioning Mr. Williamson's right to solemnize a marriage.
I have been ordained.
And also unfrocked.
Once a clergyman, always a clergyman.
I think not. How about a license?
I have it here, in my pocket.
Then you got it by a trick. But in any case, a forced marriage is no marriage. It is also a serious felony, as you'll have time to meditate upon during the next 10 years or so, unless I'm much mistaken. As for you, Carruthers, you would have done better to keep your pistol in your pocket.
I begin to think so, Mr. Holmes. But when I thought of all the precautions I'd taken to shield this girl,
For I loved her, Mr. Holmes, and it is the only time that ever I knew what love was. It fairly drove me mad to think that she was in the power of the greatest brute and bully in South Africa, a man whose name is Holy Terror from Kimberley to Johannesburg. Why, Mr. Holmes, you'd hardly believe it, but ever since that girl has been in my employment, I never once let her go past this house where I knew these rascals were lurking without following her on my bicycle just to see that she came to no harm. I kept my distance from her, and I wore a beard so that she should not recognize me, for she wouldn't have stayed in my employment long if she thought that I was following her about the country roads.
Why didn't you warn her that these rogues were in Charlington Hall?
She might have left me. I couldn't bear that. Even if she couldn't love me, it was a great deal just to see her dainty form around the house.
You call that love, Mr. Carruthers, but I should call it selfishness.
Well, maybe the two things go together. Anyway, when the cable came, I knew they were bound to make a move.
What cable?
I have it here.
My God, if you shop us, Bob Carruthers, I'll serve you as you served Jack Woodley.
Your reverence need not be excited. The case is clear enough against you. Let me see the cable. The old man is dead. I think I see how things worked. In the first place, the three of you came from South Africa on this game.
Lie number one. I never saw either of them until 2 months ago, and I've never been in South Africa in my life. So you can put that in your pipe and smoke it, Mr. Busybody Holmes.
Oh, very well. Two of you came over. His reverence is our own homemade article. Carruthers, you and Woodley. You had known Rafe Smith in South Africa. You had good reason to believe that he would not live long, and you found out that his niece would inherit a fortune. So you and Woodley came and hunted the girl. You pretended that Rafe Smith was already dead. One of you was to marry her, and the other would share in the plunder. Why was Woodley chosen as the husband?
We played cards for her on the voyage. He won.
She recognized him for the drunken brute that he was, and you rather upset the arrangement by falling in love with her.
We quarreled, and he knocked me down. I saw nothing of him until I discovered that he'd set himself up with that unfrocked padre in this house.
What?
I kept my eye on her after that.
And then Woodley brought you the cable?
He asked me if I would marry the girl myself and give him a share. I told him that she would not have me. He said something like, let's get her married first, and after a week or two she may see things a bit different, and he walked off. When the girl left this morning, I was so uneasy in my mind that I followed her on my bicycle, but before I could catch her up, the mischief was done.
You know, Watson, I was very obtuse. When you told me that you'd seen the cyclist adjust his necktie in the shrubbery, I should have jumped to the idea of a false beard.
The constabulary are in the drive, Holmes.
Then we may congratulate ourselves on a curious and in some ways unique case. Watson, I think that in your medical capacity, you might wait on Miss Smith.
Very well.
If she is not fully recovered, I'm sure that a word that we are telegraphing a young electrician in the Midlands will complete the cure. As for you, Carruthers, I think that you have done what you could to make amends for your share in an evil plot. If my evidence can be of help to you at your trial, it shall be at your disposal. I fancy that a few months will be sufficient to satisfy the demands of justice.
That was Barry Foster as Sherlock Holmes and David Buck as Dr. Watson in The Solitary Cyclist by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, dramatized for radio by Michael Bakewell. Violet Smith was played by Miriam Margolyes, Carruthers by Manning Wilson, Williamson, Douglas Blackwell, Woodley, Sean Barrett, and The Landlord by Ralph Lawton. The play was directed in our Birmingham studios by Michael Bakewell.
The Adventure of the Engineer's Thumb, one of the 56 short Sherlock Holmes stories written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, is the 9th of the 12 stories collected in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The story was first published in the Strand magazine in March 1892. Within the narrative of the story, Dr. Watson notes that this is one of only 2 cases which he personally brought to the attention of Sherlock Holmes.
Paddington! Oh, James! Paddington! Come on, Gov. Wake up. Paddington. Come on. Here. You all right? Let's take a look at you. Blimey. You've lost a bit of blood, haven't you? Could do with a proper bandage, that's for sure. Now, don't worry. I'm just getting this handkerchief out of the way, and we can see what the No. Oh, God.
The Engineer's Thumb by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Dramatized for radio by Peter Mackie, with Clive Merrison as Sherlock Holmes and Michael Williams as Dr. John Watson, and featuring Stephen Tompkinson as Victor Hatherley and John Moffat as Colonel Lysander Stark. The Engineer's Thumb.
Of all the problems which have been submitted to my friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes for solution during the years of our intimacy, there were only 2 which I was the means of introducing to his notice, that of Mr. Hatherley's thumb and that of Colonel Warburton's madness. Of these, the latter may have afforded a finer field for an acute and original observer, but the other was so strange in its inception and so dramatic in its details that it may be the more worthy of being placed upon record, even if it gave my friend fewer openings for those deductive methods of reasoning by which he achieved such remarkable results. The story has, I believe, been told more than once in the newspapers, but, like all such narratives, its effect is much less striking when set forth on block in a single half-column of print than when the facts slowly evolve before your own eyes, and the mystery clears gradually away as each new discovery furnishes a step which leads on to the complete truth. At the time, the circumstances made a deep impression upon me, and the lapse of 2 years has hardly served to weaken the effect. By the late summer of '89, not long after my marriage, I had returned to civil practice and finally abandoned Holmes in his Baker Street rooms. As I happened to live at no great distance from Partington Station, I got a few patients from amongst the officials there. One of these, whom I've painful and lingering disease, was never weary of advertising my virtues, and of endeavouring to send me on every sufferer over whom he might have any influence. One morning, at a little before 7 o'clock, I was awakened by the maid tapping at the door to announce that 2 men had come from Partington and were waiting in the consulting room. I dressed hurriedly, for I knew by experience railway cases were seldom trivial. As I hastened down the stairs, my old ally, the guard, came out of the consulting room and closed the door behind him.
Morning, Doctor.
Morning.
I've put him in there for you. I thought it for the best.
Yes, of course, but what exactly is...
A new patient. I wanted to bring him round myself.
Very thoughtful of you.
I'd better get back if that's all they're sent to you.
Yes, of course. And thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Morning to you.
Morning. Right. Sorry to have kept you waiting. My name's Watson.
I'm sorry to have knocked you up so early.
Oh, that's quite all right, Mr.
Hatherley. Victor Hatherley. I believe your maid left my card in the hall.
Oh, I'm afraid I...
It would also tell you that I'm a hydraulic engineer.
What can I do for you, Mr. Hatherley?
I came in by train this morning to Paddington.
My journey can be monotonous. Now, if you
Oh,
just tell me
mine
what...
could not be called monotonous. I have had a serious accident, you see. It's hardly the sort of thing that happens every night.
That will do, Mr. Hatherley.
Oh, just as well, eh? Just as well. But do you see? Do you see?
Stop it.
Do you see?
Stop it!
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I I seem to have made rather a fool of myself.
Drink this. That's it, all of it. That's better. Now, sit down.
Thank you. And now, Doctor, perhaps you would kindly attend to my thumb.
Put your hand on the table. That's it. Good heavens.
Or rather, the place where my thumb used to be.
This is a terrible injury. Must have bled considerably.
Yes, it did. I fainted when it was done. When I came to, I found that it was still bleeding, so I tied my handkerchief round my wrist and braced it up with a twig.
Excellent. You should have been a surgeon.
Well, it's a question of hydraulics, you see, and came within my own province.
This has been done by a very heavy and sharp instrument.
A thing like a cleaver.
An accident, I presume?
Oh, by no means. I was attacked.
Attacked?
Doctor, I have been through quite an ordeal.
Perhaps you'd better not speak of the matter. It is evidently trying to your nerves.
I think I'm over that now. And I shall have to tell my tale to the police. But between ourselves, if it were not for the convincing evidence of this wound of mine, I should be surprised if they believe my statement. I've not much in the way of proof to back it up, and even if they do believe me, the clues which I can give them are so vague, it is a question whether justice will be done.
If it's in the nature of a problem to be solved, I strongly recommend you to come to my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yes. I've heard of that fellow. I should be very glad if he would take the matter up. Would you give me an introduction to him?
I'll do better. I'll take you round to him myself.
I should be immensely obliged to you.
That's settled then. Yeah. How does that feel?
Capital.
I'll get the maid to call a cab. With a bit of luck, we'll just be in time for breakfast. When we arrived at Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes was, as I expected, lounging about the sitting room in his dressing gown, reading the agony column of the Times and smoking his before-breakfast pipe. As ever, this was composed of all the plugs and dottles left from his smokes from the day before, all carefully dried and collected on the corner of the mantelpiece. He received us in his quietly genial fashion, ordered fresh rashers and eggs, and joined us in a hearty meal.
More bacon, Mr. Hatherley?
No, I must admit to being full. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. I've felt another man since the doctor bandaged me, and I think that your breakfast has completed the cure.
It is easy to see that your experience has been no common one. Might I suggest, before you acquaint us with the detail of the ordeal you have undergone, you stretch yourself out on the sofa there?
Well,
Please, I insist.
Very well. I think perhaps you may be right, and I'm not yet quite as steady as I should be.
Here, a pillow for your head, and brandy and water on the side table. You may feel the need of a further stimulant.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Hatherley, you have our full attention.
Well, gentlemen, I feel I must take up as little of your valuable time as possible. You must know, however, that I am an orphan and a bachelor, residing alone in lodgings in London, and by profession a hydraulic engineer. 2 years ago, having served my time, and also having come into a fair sum of money through my poor father's death, I determined to start in business for myself and took professional chambers in Victoria Street. I suppose that everyone finds his first independent start a dreary experience, but to me it has been exceptionally so. During 2 years, I have had 3 consultations, 1 small job, and gross takings of £27 10 shillings. So you can well imagine how I gradually came to believe I should never have any practice at all.
I should think we all felt like that at one time or another. Hey, Holmes?
Please continue, Mr. Hatherley.
Yesterday, however, just as I was thinking of leaving the office, my clerk entered to say that there was a gentleman waiting to see me on business. A Colonel Lysander Stark. Close at his heels came the Colonel himself. A man rather over the middle size, but of an exceeding thinness. I do not think I have ever seen so thin a man. Yet this emaciation seemed to be his natural habit, and due to no disease, for his eye was bright, his step brisk, and his bearing assured.
Mr. Hatherley?
Colonel Stark. Please take a seat.
Thank you.
What can I do for you?
Mr. Heffery, you have been recommended to me as a man who is not only proficient in his profession, but is also discreet and capable of preserving a secret. I have it from the same source that you are both an orphan and a bachelor, and are residing alone in London.
That is correct, but I fail to see how all this bears on my professional qualifications, presuming that it is a professional matter on which you wish to speak to me.
Undoubtedly so. I have a commission for you, but secrecy is essential, absolute secrecy.
If I promise to keep a secret, you may absolutely depend on my doing so.
Do you promise then?
Yes, I promise.
Absolute and complete silence before, during, and after? No reference to the matter at all, either in word or writing?
Colonel Stark, please state your business. My time is of value.
How would 50 guineas for a night's work suit you?
Yes, that would suit most admirably.
I say a night's work, but an hour's would be nearer the mark. I simply want your opinion on a hydraulic machine which has got out of gear. If you show us what is wrong, we shall soon set it right ourselves. What do you think of such a commission as that?
Most acceptable.
Then you will come tonight by the last train.
Where to?
Eifold, in Berkshire. There is a train from Partington which would bring you there at about 11:15. I shall come down in a carriage to meet you.
There is a drive, then?
Oh, yes. We are quite out in the country. A good 7 miles from Eifold Station.
I doubt if there is a train back at that hour. Could I not come at some more convenient time?
We have judged it best you should come late. It is to recompense you for any inconvenience that we are paying you, a young and unknown man, a fee which would buy an opinion from the very heads of your profession. Of course, if you would like to draw out of the business, there's plenty of time to do so.
Not at all. I shall be very happy to accommodate myself to your wishes. I should like, however, to understand a little more clearly what it is that you wish me to do.
Quite so. As you are probably aware, Fuller's Earth is a valuable product that is only found in 1 or 2 places in England.
I have heard so.
Some little time ago, I bought a small place, a very small place, within 10 miles of Reading. I was fortunate enough to discover that there was a deposit of Fuller's Earth in one of my fields. On examining it, however, I found that this deposit was a comparatively small one, and that it formed a link between 2 very much larger ones upon the right and the left. Both of them, however, in the grounds of my neighbours. These good people were absolutely ignorant that their land contained that which was quite as valuable as a gold mine. Naturally, it was to my interest to buy their land before they discovered its true value, but unfortunately I had no capital by which I could do this. I took a few of my friends into the secret, however, and they suggested that we should quietly and secretly work our own little deposit, and that in this way we should earn the money which would enable us to buy the neighboring fields. This we have now been doing for some time, and in order to help us in our operations, we erected a hydraulic press. This press, as I have already explained, has got out of order, and we wish your advice upon the subject. We guard our secret very jealously, however, and if it once became known that we had hydraulic engineers coming to our little house, it would soon rouse inquiry, and then, if the facts came out, it would be goodbye to any chance of getting these fields and carrying out our plans.
Yes, of course. Exactly what type of machine are you using?
All will be made perfectly clear tonight. Mr. Heffery, I have now taken you fully into my confidence. I trust I may expect you at Eifold at 11:15?
I shall certainly be there.
Yes, I am sure you will. But please remember, you must not speak one word of this to another soul. Not one word.
As you can well imagine, Mr. Holmes, I was delighted at being offered a fee which was at least tenfold what I should have asked had I set a price on my own services. On the other hand, the manner of my patron had made an unpleasant impression on me.
But you decided to throw caution to the wind.
Quite so, Doctor. I caught the last train to Eyford, as arranged, and got there shortly after 11. But there was no one else on the platform, save a somewhat sleepy porter. Certainly no Colonel Lysander Stark. As I passed through the dimly lit wicket gate, however, I found my acquaintance of the morning waiting in the shadow upon the other side. Without a word, he grasped my arm and hurried me to a waiting carriage.
The carriage. One horse?
Yes.
Tired-looking or fresh?
Fresh and glossy.
Thank you. I'm sorry to have interrupted. Pray continue.
We drove for at least an hour. It was only supposed to have been 7 miles, but from the rate that we seemed to go and the time that we took, I should think that it must have been nearer 12. All the time, Colonel Stark sat there in silence, and I was aware that he was looking at me with great intensity. I tried to see out of the windows, but they were made of frosted glass. And when we eventually arrived at the house, he pulled me straight from the carriage into the porch, and I failed to catch even the most fleeting glance of the property. The instant that I crossed the threshold, I heard the faint rattle of the wheels as the carriage was driven away. Then, as the door was slammed heavily behind us, I found myself standing apprehensively in the pitch dark of what I assumed to be some sort of hallway.
Just give me a moment, Hatherley. Wegvlucht. Can't seem to get his lamp. That's better.
Was geht hier vor?
Hier so Rücken macht die tot so.
Wer ist denn das?
Das geht dich nichts an. Now, Mr. Hatherley, if you will be so kind as to wait in here, I shall not keep you long.
Colonel Stark placed the lamp on the table and then slipped quietly back into the hallway, shutting the door behind him. I walked across to the window, hoping I might catch some glimpse of the countryside, but a heavily barred oak shutter was folded across it. It was a wonderfully silent house. There was an old clock ticking loudly somewhere in the passage, but otherwise everything was deadly still. A vague feeling of uneasiness began to steal over me. Who were these German people? And what were they doing living in this strange out-of-the-way place? And where was the place? I was 10 miles or so from Eyford. That was all I knew. But whether north, south, east, or west, I had no idea. For that matter, Reading and possibly other large towns were within that radius, so the place might not be so secluded after all. Yet it was quite certain from the absolute stillness that we were in the country. I paced up and down the room, humming a tune under my breath to keep up my spirits, and feeling that I was thoroughly earning my 50-guinea fee. Einfuhrung in die Hydraulik. Metallverarbeitung. Colonel. I'm sorry. The woman was standing in the doorway, the darkness of the hall behind her, the yellow light from my lamp beating upon her eager and beautiful face. I could see at a glance that she was sick with fear, and the sight sent a chill to my own heart.
Shh, no noise.
But...
Please, you go. You'll not stay here. There is no good for you here.
But who are you, and what is this place?
Go quickly. No one stops you.
But I came here to do a job.
For love of heaven, get away before it is too late.
But I am somewhat headstrong by nature, and the more ready to engage in an affair when there is some obstacle in the way. I thought again of my 50-guinea fee, of my wearisome journey, and of the unpleasant night which seemed to be before me. Was it all to go for nothing? Why should I slink away without having carried out my commission, and without the payment which was my due? This woman might, for all I knew, be a monomaniac. But surely you must tell me...
I just hope this fellow knows his stuff.
I must not stay.
He would appear to be well qualified.
But who are you, and what are you...
Right, let's have a word with him then.
I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, Mr. Hatherley. This is Mr. Ferguson, my secretary and manager.
Pleased to meet you.
Hatherley?
We will take you up to see the machine now.
I'd better get my hat, then.
No need. It's inside the house.
You dig Fuller's Earth in the house?
No, this is only where we compress it.
Compress it? But why should you...
Never mind all that. All we wish you to do is examine the machine and tell us where it is at fault. Come.
And holding the lamp, The Colonel led the way up to the second floor. It was a labyrinth of an old house, with corridors, passages, narrow winding staircases, and low doors. There were no carpets or signs of any furniture above the ground floor, while the plaster was peeling off the walls, and the damp was breaking through in green, unhealthy blotches. I tried to put on as unconcerned an air as possible, despite the unexpected and dramatic warning I had been given by the German woman. The growing fear within me, however, was suddenly forgotten as Colonel Stark stopped before a low door, unlocked it, and led me into a small, square room, too small, in fact, to hold the three of us at any one time, and Ferguson remained outside.
I'm sure all this is quite familiar to you, Mr. Hathaway?
Yes, of course.
The ceiling of this chamber is really the end of the descending piston, which comes down with a force of many tons on this metal floor. It would be a particularly unpleasant thing for us if anyone were to turn it on.
It is somewhat bigger than I had expected.
What do you mean?
I had anticipated a smaller machine. Would you show me the mechanism now?
Very well. It works readily enough, but there seems to be some stiffness in its action, and there is definitely a loss of force. Ferguson would explain.
Certainly. These are the small lateral columns of water that receive the force and then transmit and multiply it in the usual way. You know all about this, of course.
Well, yes. Perhaps it would be better if I could just examine the machinery. I doubt if it will take long. There's certainly nothing fundamentally wrong with the mechanism. From what you say, it could well be one of the piston cylinders. Do you think you could start it up, Mr. Ferguson?
Certainly.
All right, that's enough. Yes, just as I thought. The fault is in one of the cylinders.
Is it serious?
Well, not particularly. That is, you can carry on working the machine, but I would advise you to get a replacement as soon as possible.
Could we fit this ourselves?
Well, certainly. It's this cylinder here. The seal around the driving head must have shrunk and has obviously led to some slight leakage, allowing a regurgitation of water through one of the side cylinders.
How do we replace it?
Well, you'd have to drain off, of course. Then it's quite simple. You take off the air accumulator here. That gives you access to the piston, and, well, you just change the seal.
And that is the only problem?
As far as I can tell.
In that case, I may as well go and see if we have a spare of some kind.
Look, Colonel, if it's all the same to you, I'm just going to take another look in the chamber, just to make sure.
Very well.
It seems all right in here. Of course, if you have a spare seal and some tools, I could easily fit it for you. It'd take no time at all. No time at all. Certainly no more than an hour.
What are you doing there?
I was just wondering what was in the floor trough here. Certainly not Fuller's earth.
Is that so?
Colonel Stark, I feel you might have more confidence in me. Surely I should be in a better position to advise on your machine if I knew the exact purpose for which it was being used.
Very well. You shall know all about the machine.
No, wait. Open this door. Do you hear me? Hello, I said open this door. Oh, Colonel. No, let me out. Let me out, let me out. I was gripped by a blind terror as I saw by the light of the lamp I had placed on the floor that the black ceiling was coming down upon me. Slowly, jerkily, but as none knew better than myself, with a force which must within a minute grind me to a shapeless pulp. I threw myself at the door again and dragged with my nails at the lock. Let me out, please, please! But I doubt if they even heard my cries above that remorseless clanking. The ceiling was now only a foot or two above my head, and as I felt its rough, hard surface, it flashed through my mind that the pain of my death would depend very much on the position in which I met it. If I lay on my face, the weight would come down upon my spine, and I shuddered to think of that dreadful snap. Easier the other way, perhaps. And yet had I the nerve to lie and look up at that deadly black shadow wavering down upon me? Already I was unable to stand erect. But then my eye caught something which brought a gush of hope back to my heart. A thin yellow line of light suddenly appeared between two of the boards that made up the wooden walls, broadening rapidly as a small panel was pushed backwards. Within a few moments, the boards had been caught beneath the jaw of the machine, and the gap had widened sufficiently for me to hurl myself through, to lay, half fainting, on the other side.
Come, quickly.
But who are you?
Please, they will see you are not there.
He wanted to kill me.
Not now.
He wanted to kill me.
You must come. I help you. Yes, quickly now, quickly.
I'm not sure if it's exactly the right size, but this seal might do the trick. Although from what I heard just then, the press seemed to work rather well.
You are right. It did work well.
Still, we can't afford to take any chances. Best change it as soon as... what's happened to Hatherley?
You will see soon enough.
Surely... No, I don't believe it.
You may believe what you like.
I told you this was never to happen again.
You tell me nothing. I am in charge here. You do as I say. Our young friend was too curious.
Surely we could have... Anything but this.
He had to be stopped. And now, you must help me to get rid of the...
9. He cloned us. Oh, my God. How could you...
Ah, I see. He will not have got far.
We better make sure that...
No, there's no time. We must find him. Come.
Why? Why do they want to kill me?
Do you not understand? Please, now they will know you are not there.
I go down the stairs. You look up here.
Please, they are coming.
Who are you? Why are you doing this?
There is no time.
Where are you taking me?
Hurry.
No sign of him up here.
Stay by the stairs. He is still in the house.
They are coming. In here.
As she spoke, a light sprang into view at the far end of the passage, and I saw the lean figure of Colonel Lysander Stark rushing forward with a lantern in one hand and something gleaming in the other.
Down here, quickly!
The window. It's your own.
Lock the door.
There is no key.
God, it's stuck. I'm not sure.
Hurry.
There.
You must jump now.
What about you?
You are stupid. Jump.
I'm not going to just leave you.
Get out of my way.
No, you must not. Remember your promise.
I said get out of my way.
We will be silent. I know it.
You will be destroyed of us.
Prince, please.
No!
I had by now maneuvered myself to the outside of the window, and as Stark pushed the woman aside and rushed across the room, I lowered myself so that I was hanging full length with my hands grasping the sill.
Fritz!
My last impression of Stark was a face distorted with fury, and the cleaver he was holding descending towards me. As I let go, I was conscious of a dull pain. I was shaken but not hurt by the fall, so I picked myself up and rushed off among the bushes as hard as I could run. Suddenly, however, a deadly dizziness and sickness came over me. I glanced down at my hand, which was throbbing painfully, and then, for the first time, saw that my thumb had been cut off and that the blood was pouring from the wound. Despite my now delirious state, I realized that a tourniquet would have to be applied as quickly as possible, and I achieved this with my handkerchief and a twig that was lying on the ground. Then there came a sudden buzzing in my ears, and the next moment I fell in a dead faint.
How long were you unconscious?
I could not tell, but it must have been a long time, as it was quite light when I came to myself.
Where were you when you regained consciousness?
That is the strangest part of the whole affair. When I first came to, naturally, I sprang to my feet, feeling that I might hardly yet be safe from my pursuers. But to my astonishment, when I looked round me, neither house nor garden were to be seen.
Extraordinary.
I found instead that I had been lying in an angle of a hedge close by the high road, and looking further I could see it was close by the very station at which I had arrived a few hours before. Were it not for the ugly wound upon my hand, all that had passed during those dreadful hours might have been an evil dream. Mr. Holmes?
Please, carry on. I seem to recall a reference.
As luck would have it, the same porter was on duty. I asked him if he remembered the carriage that had been waiting for me the night before, but he could not recall it.
But he must have known of Colonel Stark.
The name meant nothing to him. When I learned that the nearest police station was about 3 miles away, I decided to wait for the first train of the day to Paddington. I was determined to tell the authorities my story as quickly as possible, but, well, as you know, Doctor, I came to you first, and you were kind enough to bring me along here. Gentlemen, I put my case in your hands and shall do exactly what you advise.
Oh, we will certainly do everything in our power to get to the bottom of this mystery, eh, Holmes? Holmes?
What? Oh, yes, of course. Ah, here is the cutting. An advertisement that appeared in all the papers about a year ago. I think it should interest you. Lost on the 9th inst, Mr. Jeremiah Haling, age 26, a hydraulic engineer. Left his lodgings at 10 o'clock at night and has not been heard of since, was dressed in a... etc., etc. What do you make of that, Watson?
I fancy it may represent the last time the Colonel needed to have his machine overhauled.
Undoubtedly. It is quite clear that Colonel Lysander Stark is a cool and desperate man who is determined that nothing will stand in the way of his little game. How are you feeling now, Mr. Hatherley?
Much better, thank you.
Are you up to returning to Iford?
Certainly.
I shall accompany you, naturally. Watson?
Yes, of course.
And a plain-clothes man from Scotland Yard, I fancy. We will call there on the way to the station. Well, gentlemen, it must be a year or more since I've been to Berkshire. If Mr. Hatherley's most unfortunate experience is anything to go by, that is far too long.
Mr. Holmes? Mr. Holmes.
Ah, good day to you, Bradstreet.
Came as quick as I could. They sent your message on to me.
Excellent.
Although I wasn't sure. That is, I thought I might have missed you.
Well, your timing is impeccable. Nearly 5 minutes to spare.
Ah, that's all right, then. Yeah, perhaps I should have brought 1 or 2 constables along. Reinforcements, as it were.
I'm sure we shall be able to cope. As long as there are no more than, say, 4 in the gang.
4?
Oh, forgive me, Bradstreet. Dr. Watson will be with us.
Oh, I see.
Together with a young gentleman who had the misfortune to sustain an accident last night, and the further misfortune of suffering a recurrence of the bleeding a few minutes ago. Watson's taken him to the first aid post. They'll be with us shortly.
So, you really think it's the same gang, then?
Oh, a distinct possibility, Bradstreet. No more than that.
Yes, of course, I understand. It's just that, well, I've been after them far too long not to want to be in at the kill.
Which is precisely why I invited you to join us.
Very generous of you, Mr. Holmes. And I can assure you that that will be in my report.
Let us hope you will have something to report. Ah, there's Watson.
Even if we don't have any luck on this occasion, I'd just like you to know I appreciate the favour. Morning, Dr. Watson.
Morning, Bradstreet. May I introduce Victor Hatherley? Inspector Bradstreet.
How do you do, sir?
Forgive me if I don't shake hands, Inspector, as you see.
Oh, I understand, sir.
Everything all right, Watson?
Oh, I would say so. It looked a lot worse than it really was. Yes, I think he'll do.
In which case, I suggest we board our train, gentlemen. And if you have no objection, prefer a smoker. There are still 1 or 2 points that may benefit from our further consideration.
How much longer, Watson? No more than 4 or 5 minutes. We seem to be on time. So, there's no doubt in your mind, Bradstreet?
None whatsoever. Coiners.
Coiners on a large scale. They must have used the hydraulic press to form their amalgam.
And they've been turning out half-crowns by the 1,000. And we even traced them as far as Reading. They must have covered their traces well, as we couldn't get any further. Now, thanks to this lucky chance, I think we've got them right enough. Not so lucky for you, of course, Mr. Hatherley. How are you feeling, by the way?
I shall be fine.
That's the ticket.
What I cannot understand is why they should have spared you when they found you lying fainting in the garden. Perhaps the villain was softened by the woman's entreaties, eh?
I hardly think that likely. When Stark came at me with that cleaver, he wanted me dead.
We'd better take a look at that map of yours, Bradstreet. Yeah. See if we can pinpoint the house.
You said about 12 miles, didn't you, sir?
It was certainly a good hour's drive.
Well, as you can see, I've drawn a circle at a 12-mile radius around Iford. The Lord only knows where we start searching, though.
I think I could lay my finger on it.
I might have known you would have formed an opinion, Mr. Holmes. Come now, we shall see who agrees with you. I'd say the house lies to the south, or more deserted there. Mr. Hatherley?
I think... Yes, I will say the east. There look to be several quiet villages out that way.
I'm for the north. No hills there, you see. And Hatherley says he did not notice the carriage going uphill.
So, Mr. Holmes, north, south and east are gone. What do you say?
You're all wrong.
Then it's the west.
Not at all. This is where we shall find them.
But that can only be 5 minutes' walk from the station, Holmes.
I believe you may be right.
And the 12-mile drive?
Simple. 6 out and 6 back. You said yourself the horse was fresh and glossy.
Yes, it's a likely enough route. We're agreed then. We'll start our search in Eyford. Though exactly where we look, your guess is as good as mine.
May I suggest, gentlemen, that you start by looking out of the window?
Keep back there! Keep back!
Quite a place, indeed. I should imagine they can see the smoke from several miles away. Well, Mr. Hathaway?
This drive, the bushes, and... Oh, yes, that second-floor window. That must have been the one I jumped from. Well, this is the house, all right.
Not for much longer, I shouldn't think. Roof looks set to go at any moment.
If it's any consolation, Hathaway, at least you have had your revenge on them. It was probably your oil lamp that set fire to the place when it was crushed by the press. Your friends of last night were too excited in the chase to observe it at the time.
Keep back there now! Keep back with the others! All right, Constable. These gentlemen are with me. Really? And who might you be, then? Inspector Bradstreet, Scotland Yard. Beg your pardon, sir. I didn't know. Local man, are you? Fielding, sir. What do you know about all this? Oh, not much, sir. Fire broke out in the night, I reckon. Whose house is it? Belongs to a Dr. Beecher.
Thin man, is he? Sharp features, German accent.
No, sir. Dr. Beecher is an Englishman. There isn't a man in the parish who has a better lined waistcoat. Must be that manager fella, Ferguson.
What about the woman?
There was no woman there. At least not to my knowledge. But there was a gentleman staying with him. A patient, as I understand it. Foreigner. Looked as though a nice drop of good Berkshire beef wouldn't do him any harm either.
I dare say Colonel Lysander Stark and his colleagues are all at least 100 miles away by now and possibly enjoying the culinary delights of some other county. Or country.
Time clear! The roof! It is going! Keep back now! Everybody get back! Watch out for that ceiling, Bert. All right to take a look in here. Oh, just be careful, sir. Still a bit hot. We haven't finished everything down yet. Come on! What's the hold up down there? So, what do you think then, Mr. Hatherley?
I hardly know what to say. But this is it, all right.
Good heavens. Yes, it is still hot.
All this twisted metal, it nearly cost me my life.
Still, you live to tell the tale.
Have you seen the inspector?
Just over there, sir. Oh, yes. Thank you. You'll have to mind when you tread, sir.
Yes, I shall be careful. Ah, Holmes. I've been taking a stroll around the grounds just to see what I could see.
Did you find anything?
Only the reason why you lost no more than your thumb at the hands of Colonel Lysander Stark. The ground where you fell unconscious is quite soft, and there were some quite distinct impressions, including 2 sets of footprints leading down to the road. It would seem, happily, that you were carried there by 2 persons, one of whom had remarkably small feet and the other unusually large ones.
More than likely that would be Ferguson. Probably didn't want to risk a murder charge, so he helped the woman get you out of harm's way, Mr. Hatherley.
And I suppose I should be grateful to him.
Got to bring another hose up.
Well, this has been a pretty business for me. I nearly lost my life, and I've certainly lost my thumb and a 50 guinea fee.
But you have gained experience.
Which I would gladly have forgone.
Ah, but indirectly it may be of value. You have only to put your experience into words to gain the reputation of being excellent company for the remainder of your existence.
Even if that should not prove to be the case, I must thank you, gentlemen, for all the trouble you've taken on my behalf.
No, not at all.
Now, if you will excuse me, I feel I should return to London as soon as possible. Or who knows, I may have another client waiting for me.
Perhaps I should travel with you. I don't doubt you may still be feeling the effects of your experience.
Thank you, Doctor, but I shall manage perfectly well.
As you wish. But stop by the surgery tonight, so I can change the dressing.
I will. Now, I really must hurry. I believe there's a train due shortly. Good day to you all.
Good day, Mr. Hathaway. Take care of yourself.
Sadder, but it is to be hoped a much wiser young man. Well, Inspector, have you had more luck than I?
Possibly, Mr. Holmes. We have a witness who saw a cart containing 3 people and some very bulky boxes driving rapidly in the direction of Reading early this morning. We pursued our inquiries there, of course, but the trail seems to have gone cold. We also found considerable quantities of nickel and tin stored in one of the outhouses. No coin, unfortunately. Probably in those boxes.
More than likely.
Inspector Bradstreet! Oh, now what? Yes, Fielding? Can we move the metal now, sir? I'll come down. Did you want to examine it, Mr. Holmes?
Later, perhaps.
I'll have it sent down to the station.
A moment, Inspector. I have one small piece of evidence for you.
What's that, Mr. Holmes?
This. Holmes. It was found by one of the firemen upon a windowsill on the second floor. Perhaps I should have returned it to Mr. Hatherley, but then I doubt if he's any further need of it, despite his previous attachment. Bradstreet.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Well, this had better go to the station as well. Fielding!
Well, Holmes, what now? To Reading? See if we can catch up with them? Little point, I fear. They've had far too good a start. So, what do you suggest? What I suggest, my dear fellow, is that with all possible speed we remove ourselves to the local inn. We may yet be in time to sample some of the good Berkshire beef the constable has so heartily recommended.
Although our trip to Berkshire did not produce the tangible result Holmes had undoubtedly wished for, I, for one, still savoured the taste of the succulent slices that were placed before us that day. I have no knowledge as to whether the hydraulic engineer acted on Holmes' advice for capitalizing on his most singular experience or not. However, a week after our return, Holmes did receive a note from Hatherley thanking him for his assistance and inviting him to forward his accounts for services rendered. Needless to say, Holmes did not comply with this request. As for the sinister Colonel Lysander Stark, his assistant Ferguson, and the beautiful German woman, to all intents and purposes they simply vanished off the face of the earth, and nothing has been heard of them from that day to this. For his part, Holmes never referred to the matter again. Understandable, of course. Few people like to be reminded of their failures, although, in this case, lack of success would be nearer the mark. But I doubt if Holmes would acknowledge or accept the distinction.
In The Engineer's Thumb, Sherlock Holmes was played by Clive Merrison and Dr. Watson by Michael Williams. Victor Hatherley was played by Stephen Tompkinson and Colonel Lysander Stark by John Moffat. With Sybil Winthrop as Elise, David Googe as Inspector Bradstreet, Vincent Brimble as Ferguson and Constable Fielding, and Paul Downing as the railway guard and the fireman. The violinist was Leonard Friedman. The Engineer's Thumb was dramatized for radio by Peter Mackie and directed by Patrick Rayner.
Imagination Theatre is an American syndicated radio drama program airing on FM and AM radio stations across the United States. It features modern radio dramas. The program first aired in 1996. Originally produced by Jim French Productions, multiple radio series have aired as part of Imagination Theatre, the most popular of which are the two long-running mystery series The Adventures of Harry Nile and The Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Somewhere within each of us.
Come on in.
Between the realities of life and the fantasies of our mind.
Now, how may I help you?
Lies the imagination.
Nothing is beyond the scope of my investigation.
A fertile place that only you can touch.
Oh, my God, forgive me.
But one that, for tonight, we control.
Welcome to Imagination Theatre, America's premier radio drama. Your weekly venture into the hidden corridors of your mind. An adventure brought to you by Avon Books. Tonight, Sherlock Holmes unravels the mystery of how an assassin was guided by intelligence that somehow leaked out of a sealed room.
Then I regret I will not be able to help you.
Now, look here. There's no need
Well, obviously, whoever stole the document knew what he was after and knew how to get it.
And then, an innocent game of golf goes deadly when death makes up the foursome.
Do you know what you're doing to Ralph Samuels?
Look, put your club back in the bag. I assume the game is over.
Get your hands off this golf club!
This is Jim French, your writer-producer, inviting you to sit back, turn down the lights, and turn up your imagination for tonight's Imagination Theater.
In the peaceful English countryside, a severe summer drought reveals the ruins of a small village and the mysterious bones of a brutally murdered young woman.
In a dry season.
Who was she, and who killed her? Detective Chief Inspector Banks is determined to unmask a murderer who's walked free for 50 years, even though the only witnesses are long gone, or in the grave.
In a dry season.
Best-selling author Michael Conley calls In a Dry Season wonderful. The Los Angeles Times Book Review proclaims In a Dry Season is first-rate. And the Washington Post Book World raves fans of P.D. James and Ruth Rendell should look no further than Peter Robinson. In a Dry Season, a New York Times notable book, nominated for both an Edgar and an Anthony Award. The most highly praised suspense novel of the year. In a Dry Season. Murder has never been hotter. In a Dry Season. Now in paperback from Avon Books.
Now we return to Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
The Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starring John Gilbert as Holmes and Lawrence Albert as Dr. Watson.
My name is John H. Watson, physician. The events which I am about to relate took place while I was under a burden of grief over the death of my bride of only a year, my beloved Constance. It was just into the year 1888, and that week I had moved my things from Kensington back to the old rooms on Baker Street, which I had long shared with Sherlock Holmes. Holmes was doing his best to console me, though I must say it did little good.
Ah, Watson. Oh, still sitting by the fire. That's where I left you this morning. Any callers?
No.
Well, I stopped down at Savile Row. I took your advice and ordered a new hat. You do remember a year ago you said I didn't own a decent dress hat?
Oh, did I say that? I don't remember.
Well, I finally done it. Wait till you see it. Oh, my dear friend. Are you no better today?
No, Holmes, I'm afraid not.
Oh, this makes me feel quite useless. For 7 years we've been close as brothers, and yet I haven't found a way to relieve your melancholy.
You can do nothing, Holmes. It will take time.
Yes, but seeing patients and treating other people's problems, that should have been good medicine for you.
Physician, heal thyself, eh? I wish it were that simple. Do you know what I wish?
Well, say it.
I wish it were the old days. Me, traipsing along on your cases, possibly adding a tiny bit of assistance here and there, however trivial.
Oh, your assistance was never trivial, Watson. And if you are available once again, I shall be overjoyed to have you at my side. Yes, what you need is diversion, then you'll soon be right again. Oh, sit still, I'm on my feet. Ah, yes, Mrs. Hudson.
I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Holmes, but you have two visitors, a gentleman and a young woman. He gave me his card. Here it is.
Well, by all means, have him out.
And the young woman?
Of course, the young woman, too.
Right away, sir. And will you be having tea?
No, hold off the tea.
Very good.
Ah, here, Watson, have a look.
Yeah?
Our visitor's calling card.
Oh, good heavens.
Yes, Sir Peter Ashmore, head of the Foreign Office. Well, we're about to be honored.
I thought you detested politicians.
Politics and politicians are a dragging anchor on the ship of state. But no one this high up would be caught dead consulting a detective unless on a matter of the highest urgency. Otherwise he'd have sent a staff member, which suggests that he desires secrecy. Well, politics or not, this may prove to be irresistible.
In a few moments, Mrs. Hudson ushered in our guests. Ashmore was a thin, pallid-faced man, 70, I would judge, with a palsy of the hands which he tried to hide by constantly twisting a large ring round his finger. The woman with him appeared to be in her early 40s, with traces of what must have been great beauty when she was a girl. She, too, was pale, and clung to Ashmore's arm as he spoke.
Mr. Holmes, I'm Peter Ashmore. This is my daughter, Eleanor Ashmore.
Enchanted, Miss Ashmore.
How do you do?
And this is my friend and associate, Dr. John Hamish Watson.
Charmed, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes, I must speak with you privately.
Certainly. Do sit down. No one will bother us.
No. Privately. With you alone, Mr. Holmes.
Dr. Watson is my trusted associate in all my cases. You may speak before him as you speak before me. Now, what brings you here, Sir Peter?
This places me in an embarrassing position. Won't you grant me the courtesy of a private audience?
Sir, I am a physician and a former officer in the Fusiliers. Now, I assure you, I am quite accustomed to keeping confidences.
And he is an integral part of my success as a consulting detective. I do not hear cases without him. Now, please, do sit down.
No, thank you. I prefer to stand.
No, please sit, Father. He's not been well, Dr. Watson. Perhaps you could
I don't need a doctor. What I need is a... You should appreciate that I wouldn't be consulting a detective, even one as celebrated as you, if this were not such a delicate, and I may say critical matter.
I assure you this is not the first time a member of government has been a client. Now, how may I help you?
Well, I want you to recover something that has been stolen.
Ah, and what would that be?
A vital document.
What sort of document?
That is a state secret. What's important is it was taken from a sealed room and must be found.
A sealed room in the Foreign Office?
No, in my home.
You keep state secrets in your home?
Well, never before, and only this once. I took it with me yesterday afternoon to hand deliver this morning. I hid it out of sight in an unused room. Then I locked and sealed the only door to the room. I took every precaution.
And how did you seal the door?
With sealing wax over the keyhole, stamped with my ring. This ring. There is no other like it.
And should anyone try to insert a key, the wax impression of the ring would be spoiled.
And when you went to retrieve the document this morning, you found the wax intact?
Perfectly intact. But when I went to get the document, it was gone.
I see. Well, now it's time you told me what the envelope contained.
Impossible, Mr. Holmes. I can describe the envelope, but I cannot divulge what was inside it.
Then I regret I will not be able to help you.
Now, look here. There's no need for...
Well, obviously, whoever stole the document knew what he was after and knew how to get it. Unless I know at least as much as the thief knew, I cannot hope to find him.
Well, you're asking me to compromise a state secret.
Seems to me it was already compromised when you took it to your home.
Yes, I should have left it in the safe at the Foreign Office, but I can't tell you what was in the envelope.
I see. Then we shall wish you Godspeed in your search.
No. Don't you see, I'm a desperate man, Mr. Holmes. How can I tell the Prime Minister? I shall bear everlasting blame if that letter falls into the wrong hands. It could affect our national destiny.
Then why not go to the Scotland Yard?
Scotland Yard. A platoon of thick souls, constables mucking about, everyone knowing everything.
And I cannot help you unless I know everything.
Please, Mr. Holmes, my father isn't a well man, and this matter is making him sicker by the hour. You surely understand, don't you, Doctor? Mr. Holmes, please do as he asks. Help him find the letter.
I would be more than willing, if I'm given the tools I need to do it.
Then, do I have your word, both of you, as gentlemen and patriots, that you will hold this matter in strictest confidence?
You have our word.
And now I suggest we get on with it.
Well, as you know, 18 years ago, the last member of the Bonaparte family, the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, lost his throne after von Moltke's Prussians defeated the French at Sedan.
Yes, and he died a few years later here in England.
Yes, in Chislehurst. His defeat marked the end of French territorial ambitions and the beginning of the German Empire under Bismarck. Louis Napoleon III left a heritage of failed ambition and broken promises. But he also has left something else here in England.
No, and what might that be?
A son.
I say.
This young man is claiming the right to the French throne as Napoleon IV, and is secretly planning a coup to overthrow the Third Republic and establish himself as Emperor of France.
And how old is this pretender to the throne?
Just 18.
Yes, but he wants to be the fourth Napoleon on the throne, eh? Not too ambitious, is he?
We take him very seriously. He's living right here in London and has followers. They meet regularly in secret places. He could raise an army of royalists, and the French are ripe for revolt. Now, as you know, when they declared war against Prussia in 1870, they were quickly defeated. They lost Alsace and part of Lorraine, and had to pay a heavy war indemnity to Germany for their trouble. Napoleon III was cast out, and 3 presidents later, Carnot became president. But with Carnot as unpopular as he is, if a descendant of Napoleon Bonaparte appeared upon the scene now, with France in upheaval, he could be the rallying point for a full-scale revolution. And the Foreign Office had reason to believe that in such a struggle, Bismarck would seize the opportunity to march against France, and on his way he would swallow up Belgium and Luxembourg, and Britain would be staring across the Channel at a Prussian giant.
Ah, I see. The stolen letter, then, is a warning to President Carnot about this new pretender?
No, we've kept him informed from the first. The letter contains our offer to remove the boy.
Remove him? How?
Well, we would place him where he could no longer be a threat to Carnot.
Banish him to Elba, like his great-uncle?
Hardly. He would be removed from the scene permanently.
Ah. And in return for this service?
The French government would share with Britain everything their agents learn about Bismarck's military plans, which would give us priceless advance notice of Prussia's intentions, without risking a single British agent.
But what about the mother of this young man?
Well, we don't know who she was. Probably just a poor French serving girl. But, Mr. Holmes, such details are quite beyond the scope of your investigation, and so I've...
Nothing is beyond the scope of my investigation. I, and only I, determine what facts I need to know. If you deny me the slightest shred of information, you tie my hands. And so, what do you propose to do with this young man? Execute him, or lock him up for life?
One life, in exchange for saving the lives of thousands of men in a preventable war, would seem an acceptable transaction.
And who knows about this offer?
Only the Prime Minister and, obviously, myself and my daughter. She spends considerable time in Paris teaching English at l'École Anglaise, and she always brings back invaluable information.
I love both England and France, Mr. Holmes, and I know that any uprising at this time might rupture relations between the two countries and plunge all Europe into another war.
I must say, Eleanor Ashmore made a most fetching appeal. She had risen from her chair and stepped closer to Holmes and me, so close that I noticed the scent of her cologne. It was most attractive. Then she dropped her eyes and stepped back.
I have a four-wheeler waiting in the street. Will you come with us to Belmere before dark?
Bring our usual kits, Watson.
The Ashmore mansion, Belmere, loomed above a pond in Kensington. It had 3 main floors, surmounted by a steep canard roof spiked with turrets and spires. A butler named Scribner greeted us at the door. As we stood in the grand entry hall, I remarked that the house resembled a chateau I had seen in the Loire Valley of France before the Afghan War.
Yes, in fact, it was patterned after Chateau Azay-le-Rideau in the Loire. How clever of you to pick it out, Doctor.
Yes, my daughter is quite expert in all such matters. Now, Scribner,
Sir.
The presence of these 2 gentlemen is not to be discussed in this house or anywhere else. Is that clear?
Very good, sir.
Father, I'm going to be late for my class if I don't leave immediately.
Another night class?
For ambitious office workers hoping for foreign assignment. Will you gentlemen excuse me?
Certainly, Miss Ashmore.
What are you studying?
I teach French, Dr. Watson.
Ah, you teach French to the English and English to the French.
As I said, she's lived in France on and off for years. Knows the French like a book.
Thank you both for helping my father and the cause of peace.
It was a great pleasure to meet you, and I hope we shall meet again. Au revoir.
Au revoir, Dr. Watson.
Comes and goes whenever she pleases. Remarkable, remarkable girl. Brilliant. Well, come with me. I'll show you the room.
And how large is your household staff?
Well, there's Scribner, then there's my housekeeper, the cook, and the groundskeeper.
Have they been with you long?
All but the housekeeper. I hired her shortly after my wife passed away. Our original housekeeper retired when Evangeline died. Very devoted to her.
Tell me, why didn't you simply hide the letter in your own bedroom?
Because I sleep like a dead man. If someone entered my room after I was asleep, I would never know it. Here we are. Now, the room is just down this hall.
But I presume you trust your staff implicitly, do you, Sir Peter?
Oh, yes, of course.
Well, then, pray tell, why did you think it necessary to seal the room where you hid the letter?
What?
Well, if you had no reason to fear the theft of the letter, why had sealed the room it was in?
Good heavens, sir, it's a state secret. One takes every precaution. Ah, here's the room. I hid the envelope here, Mr. Holmes, right here in the bottom drawer of this chest. There, you see? The drawer has a false bottom. I hid the letter under the false bottom.
I see. You would be surprised at how common false bottoms are.
Holmes spent little time examining the drawer. Instead, he strode to the fireplace, where he tested for a hidden passage. He used his cane to turn up the rugs. His eyes traveled from cornice to cornice, to curtain rods, to the lounge beneath the window, to the divan and the chairs around a low table. Nothing escaped his glance. Then he went to the window again and peered out at the sycamore, gently tapping a pane here and there.
Nothing's been broken into, as you can see.
Yes, so it appears. Watson, will you accompany me outside and bring the kits? Now, hold my coat.
I say, you're not going to climb that tree.
Well, if the thief could do it in the black of night, I should be able to do it in the twilight. Hand me my magnifying glass for the kit, Watson.
Yeah. Here it is.
Yes, and up I go. There. Oh, my, how long has it been since you saw London from a tree, Watson?
I don't know. Be careful up there.
Oh, it's quite delightful up here. Ah, yes, quite delightful. And very instructive. Well, all right, then. Coming back down, Watson. Here, take the glass.
Yes, I have it.
There.
Well?
Well, one of the 16 small panes of glass in the window was removed to allow someone to reach in and unlatch it. When the theft was complete, the burglar climbed back through the window and replaced the glass using glazier's putty to secure it. The putty is still damp.
So, it was an outside job?
Outside and inside. Now, please go down to the road and hail a cab. I'll join you in a moment.
And where are we going?
Well, that is what I'm about to find out from Sir Peter.
Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson will return.
Hi, I'm Beth Ann, and I'm an 8-year-old expert. This week's topic of expertise is how to become as smart as me. First, you must love to travel back in time. Second, you must know who to call to investigate the latest crime. And third, you must not be afraid of voices from unknown places. That's why I told my mom about Imagination Theater's monthly subscription plan. You get the latest, greatest Imagination Theater episode every week for only $24.95 per month. That's less than $5.75 per CD or cassette, and they give you their Halloween and Christmas shows for free. Your Visa and MasterCard are automatically charged, and you can cancel anytime you wish. Just call 1-800-229-7234. Mention my name, Beth Ann, and you'll also be entered to win a CC Radio, the most powerful AM radio made from the C. Crane Company. So bulk up on brain matter and tune into What's Smart and learn the true meaning of brilliance.
The Imagination Theater monthly subscription plan. Call 1-800-229-7234. You may win a CC Radio from the C. Crane Company. Call 1-800-229-7234 today.
Now we return to the adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Holmes came out of the mansion in 5 minutes, just as I succeeded in getting a hansom to stop.
Where to go? Lambeth, driver. As fast as you could go.
Why are we going to Lambeth?
That is where we shall find the thief who stole the secret paper.
And how did you find that out?
Ashmore told me.
Ashmore? No. Then he knew it all along?
Only he didn't know he knew it.
I beg your pardon?
He didn't know he knew what he knows.
You never change, do you, Holmes? You always do it. Just as you're about to spring the trap and find the guilty party, you become infuriating.
I do?
Well, you know you do. You toy with me. When I ask you a simple question, you tease me like a cat with a mouse.
Except this cat has a conscience, and in good conscience, I can't tell you my conclusion just yet, but unless this cab goes faster, we may lose this case altogether. Faster, driver. Go like the wind.
We flew down Kensington to Knightsbridge, then on to Sloane Street and made a sharp left turn onto Grosvenor Road, along the Thames. And here the carriage traffic slowed us down. It had grown dark, and the temperature was freezing.
Lambeth Academy of Golf, what address?
The Lambeth Academy of Language.
I never heard of it.
No, I shouldn't wonder. It would be near Lambeth Road in Millbank, driver. Look sharp for a window sign or doorway.
Then we're following Eleanor Ashmore.
Or trying to. She had a good head start. From my perch in the tree back at Belmare, I saw her get into a cab.
But surely you don't think she stole her father's secret paper?
She arranged it.
Well, then who did it?
Oh, wait a minute. Stop. Stop, driver. Yes, we'll walk from here, driver, but don't go away. There'll be extra in it if you follow us.
And where are we going, Holmes?
Well, in the next block, there is a hansom at the curb. A woman just got out and went in one of the doors between shops, and a cab's waiting. Yes, I'm sure it's the Atmore woman.
But why are we following her?
Because everything fits.
What do you mean by that?
She has practically given us the thief and his motive.
She may have given it to you, but she didn't give it to me.
No, look sharply now. Here, flat against the wall.
She's coming out of that doorway with a man.
In a great hurry. Here, come on. Driver, let us back in. Now, head that other cab off if you can. Watson, there may be danger. I have no doubt he's armed.
Is he who I think he is?
We'll know in a moment. Head him off. Force him off of the road.
Get away! Get away! I am desperate. I will kill you.
Now, jump down and seize the woman, Watson. I'll take the man.
Madam, are you injured?
No, you fool, I'm not injured, but you will be if you don't let us go.
Who are these men?
The ones I told you about.
Sherlock Holmes?
Yes, at your service.
You fool! I will kill you this moment. Ow! Oh, my hand!
Get his gun, Watson.
Yes. I have it.
You don't know what you're doing.
If either of them tries to get away, Watson, shoot them.
I hope I won't have to do that. But I warn you, monsieur et madame, I have fought for England before, and I would do it again.
Holmes, Watson, you have it.
Sir Peter came, just as I asked him to do.
Mon Dieu. You are really determined to ruin me, aren't you?
Do you have it, Mr. Holmes?
Oh, good evening, Sir Peter.
Who's in the cab? Eleanor.
Hello, Father.
What are you doing?
You don't know, do you?
Do you have the letter?
I suspect the letter is moot at this point. Sir Peter, may I present Napoleon Bonaparte IV?
Is this true?
Yes, Father, it's true.
Well, what do you have to do with him?
As Mr. Holmes no doubt deduced, he is my son.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a moment.
Back at Belmare, Sir Peter, just before we raced after your daughter, I asked you two things. The name of the school where she taught, and you told me it was the Lambeth School of Language. And I also asked you if she had been in France 18 years ago. And you confirmed that she was. That gave both the opportunity and the motive for your daughter to steal your document, to protect her son, your grandson, Napoleon IV.
Dr. Watson will return in a minute to finish his story.
In the peaceful English countryside, a severe summer drought reveals the ruins of a small village and the mysterious bones of a brutally murdered young woman.
In a dry season.
Who was she, and who killed her? Detective Chief Inspector Banks is determined to unmask a murderer who's walked free for 50 years, even though the only witnesses are long gone, or in the grave.
In a dry season.
Best-selling author Michael Conley calls In a Dry Season wonderful. The Los Angeles Times Book Review proclaims In a Dry Season is first-rate. And the Washington Post Book World raves fans of P.D. James and Ruth Rendell should look no further than Peter Robinson. In a Dry Season, a New York Times notable book, nominated for both an Edgar and an Anthony Award. The most highly praised suspense novel of the year. In a Dry Season. Murder has never been hotter. In a Dry Season. Now in paperback from Avon Books.
Now we return to Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
The plot to seize Bonaparte IV came to nothing. He returned to France to try to restore the monarchy, but General Georges Boulanger was waging his own revolt against the French government, and he too failed and fled to Belgium. Madame Ashmore moved out of Belmar to be with her son in the south of France. Holmes bought a new cane to replace the one he broke when he knocked the gun out of young Napoleon's hand. And then we went on to another adventure, which I will tell you next time we meet.
The further adventures of Sherlock Holmes featured John Gilbert as Sherlock Holmes and Lawrence Albert as Dr. Watson, with Lee Posh, Douglas Young, Katrina Baxter-Hodiak, and Terry Rose. Our engineer was Peggy Stokes, and sound effects were created by David Freed and Scott Anderson. The Case of the Sealed Room was directed by Pat French. This series of Sherlock Holmes stories are written by Jim French. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson were created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and appear in stories and novels by him. Use of the Sherlock Holmes characters in this dramatization is by arrangement with the estate of Dame Jean Conan Doyle. This is John Patrick Lowry speaking.
Don't even think of going away. We'll be right back right after these messages.
The newly discovered casebook of Sherlock Holmes, Mystery of the Obese Escapologist. The newly discovered casebook of Sherlock Holmes was a Radio 2 comedy series written by Tony Hare. It starred Roy Hudd, Chris Emmett, Jeffrey Holland, and June Whitfield, and was broadcast between the 16th of January 1999 to the 20th of February 1999. The burlesque series was a comic pastiche of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's fictional detective Sherlock Holmes. The series was recorded in front of a live audience, and each 30-minute episode was broadcast on BBC Radio 2 at 1 p.m., making some of the rude, and occasionally crude, jokes rather risque for the time of day.
BBC Radio proudly presents...
It's nothing to be proud of, I can assure you.
Thank you. Presents the newly discovered casebook of Sherlock Holmes. The Journal of Dr. John H. Watson, regular contributor to the British medical journal, Which Stethoscope magazine, and inventor of the self-raising thermometer. I am also somewhat highly chuffed to be a close personal friend of and constant companion to Sherlock Holmes, England's greatest detective and foremost toffee-nosed ponce. Not all of our pursuits together were in the line of duty. Sometimes we enjoyed more relaxing pleasures such as the ballet, a chamber concert, all-in frog wrestling. Or, a particular favourite of Holmes, a cockfight. Highly illegal, of course, but that was part of the attraction for him. My favourite pastime was spending an evening at the music hall, and one such occasion resulted in a most bizarre case, which Holmes called the mystery of the obese escapologist.
What amuses you, Watson? You've had that most singular smirk on your face ever since we boarded this growler at Baker Street.
I'm happy, Holmes. You know how the prospect of a gay night out with you fills me with delight.
One day that phrase will take on a whole new meaning, I assure. Oh, look, we're passing Clapham Common. There we are. I have to say I only accompany you on this frivolous jaunt out of a sense of loyalty. Now, just sit quietly and be grateful I am gracing you with my presence.
My favourite comedian is on tonight.
Oh, yes, I know. Hails from Leeds, I understand. Willie Eckerslike. The Yorkshire wag. Such a vulgar little man.
Oh, we must be there, Holmes. Wilton's Music Hall. Now, be honest, Holmes. The place positively radiates jollity. Who knows what delights await us behind those portals?
You're welcome to find out, Watson. That's the gentleman's urinal. What? We appear to be stuck in traffic. We'll alight here and walk the rest of the way. It's only around the corner.
Very well.
I still say the music hall attracts the lowly classes and encourages immorality, which is why women of questionable virtue frequent this area.
No doubt you're referring to the painted strumpet lurking in that dark doorway ahead of us.
Walk straight past, Watson, and give her no encouragement to ply her disgusting trade.
Hello, dearie. Fancy a short time with a naughty girl?
Be off with you, harlot.
Oh, Dr. Watson, I haven't seen you down these...
Why, I think you've got the wrong person, madam.
You know this pathetic creature, Watson?
Mr. Holmes, you as well. Oh, it's been at least a week.
Holmes, I am truly shocked.
Here, I still owe you some change after the last time, Mr. Holmes. You'd only got a 10-bob note, if you remember.
Why don't you put a sock in it, Rosie?
That'll cost you £0.50 extra.
Come along now, folks. Performance starts in 10 minutes. Get your tickets at the box office.
There's a nice little bit of character acting there, Watson, wasn't it?
Yes, Holmes, we need to go in.
Not before time. Good evening to you, madam. Watson, get your wallet open and purchase the tickets.
So you know Rosie, then?
She helped me with my inquiries once.
Is that what you call it?
Unless you want to poke in the eye with a gloved finger, I suggest you change the subject, Watson. Get the tickets.
Oh, very well. Good evening. 2 9-pennies, please, a packet of Butterkist and a bag of whelks.
Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. Lend me your programme, Watson. I wish to ascertain the names of the performers I'm expected to endure over the next 2 hours. Now, let's see. Hubert Truss. Uplifting balladeer. Boring. Yeah. Freeman, Hardy and Willis. Foot fetishists in harmony. Dolores and her yodeling gerbils. Huge Deanie, the obese escapologist. And Willie Eckerslike, the Yorkshire wag, at a veritable feast for the senses.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Wilton's Music Hall for another cornucopian carouse of cacophonous crap. Before we proceed with this evening's effulgent entertainment, I have an announcement to make. The management regrets that due to unforeseen circumstances, our top of the bill, Willie Eckerslike, the Yorkshire wag, will be unable to appear tonight. What? However, Wilton's Music Hall is delighted to announce that we have obtained the services of the East End's answer to the Swedish Nightingale, the Leighton Buzzard herself. Miss Eleanor Mentry.
Who? Elementary, my dear Watson.
Never heard of her.
But first, prepare yourselves to be both amazed and amused by the mellifluous madrigalian music of Dolores and her yodeling gerbils.
Dear reader of this journal, our evening at the music hall turned out to be a reasonably edifying affair, although, alas, Miss Eleanor Mentry was no match for Willie Eckerslike, the Yorkshire wag. We thought nothing new of that evening until a week later. It was late afternoon, and Holmes and I were relaxing at 221B Baker Street. What time is it?
You just said in the narration, late afternoon.
No, exactly. What time is it exactly?
3:20.
Enter.
Here's your afternoon tea and some Battenberg dainties. You'll have to have it early today, because I'm going out.
Where are you going, Mrs. Hudson?
I do not wish to discuss it.
But you must, Mrs. Hudson, otherwise we can't continue with the plot.
Oh, well, if it's that important. My sister and I went to Deacon's Music Hall last night because our favourite comedian was on, Willie Eckerslike, the Yorkshire wag.
Oh, he's my favourite comedian as well.
He was indisposed. The management said due to unforsaken circumstances.
Dear me, that's 2 weeks running he's failed to turn up for a show. Most unprofessional.
Who appeared in his place, Mrs. Hudson?
Some screeching old boiler called Eleanor Mentry. Oh, I've heard the blade on a knife grind a stone make a more mellifluous sound than she did.
A most impressive allegory, Mrs. Hudson, particularly from someone from the lower classes, such as yourself.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Patronising git.
I almost heard that.
You were meant to.
Do you have a programme of last night's performance?
Yes, I have it here in my apron pocket.
How convenient for radio. May I glance through it?
Well, you can have it for 8 That's half of what I paid for it.
Capitalist cow.
Well, every little helps. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go and console my sister.
I find the fact that a popular performer such as Willie Eckerslike, the Yorkshire wag, should miss 2 separate weekly engagements without an explanation of his absence intriguing, to say the least.
I suppose there's nothing in the programme appertaining to Eckerslike's indisposition, is there?
No. He's billed to appear alongside the usual dross, the Draylon brothers, boasting the best material in the business, Igor Blimey, the hunchback Cockney troubadour, And Huge Deany, the obese escapologist.
Oh, we saw him at Wilton's, remember? I liked him.
How simple are your pleasures, my dear Watson. Come along. We shall go to Deacon's Music Hall to make inquiries. And Watson...
Yes, Holmes?
Don't dunk your Battenberg. It's not nice.
Dear reader of this journal, Holmes and I hailed a horse-drawn music link to transport us to the manager's office at Deacon's Music Hall.
Mr. Delfont. Or may I call you Bunny? Now, as proprietor of this music hall, how many times have you employed Willie Eckerslike, the Yorkshire wag?
This week was to have been the 5th time already. He's never let me down before. Such a reliable performer. Vulgar without going too far. We had one coming on last week, stood on this very stage and said, and I quote, "I see they've just opened a station in honour of our most glorious Queen. Yes, it's called Oscar Wilde Central."
Outrageous.
Yeah, what's a man to do? He packs them in and I've got to make a living.
Thank you, Mr. Delfont, for that most illuminating diatribe, but not for building your part up, which you've been trying ever since rehearsals. Now, have you been made aware of the nature of Willie Eckerslike's indisposition?
Afraid not, gentlemen. He turned up on Monday morning for his band call, seemed his usual self. Then he went into his dressing room to set out his props. Oh, have you seen his routine with the exploding ferrets and the blast of air out of his trouser leg? Paralyses them, that does.
Really? I happen to know he stole that routine. It used to be Disraeli's party trick at the Windsor Castle Christmas party. The royal children loved it, and so did I. However, do continue.
While Willie was in his dressing room, he had a visitor. There was a bit of a commotion. Then I heard 1.5 sets of footsteps clattering down the stairs and out of the stage door.
1.5 sets of footsteps?
Yes. They must have been in such a hurry, Willie didn't have time to put his artificial leg back on.
So Willie Eckerslike was a monoped?
I didn't know that. By Jove, I'm quite flabbergasted.
Watson, the man was a comedian, not a tap dancer. Do you still have Willie's leg, Mr. Delfont?
Yes, I've been using it as a draft excluder under my door. Here you are.
Oh, my word.
Yes. This is all that remained of Willie in his dressing room, although I did find this on the staircase.
It's just a book of matches.
It's not just any book of matches. See what's printed on the cover? The Battersea Workhouse. That will be our next port of call. We shall take our leave of you now, Mr. Delfont. Watson, bring the artificial limb with you.
Why me? I shall feel most conspicuous carrying such an item.
Then shove it down the front of your coat, and if anyone asks, say you're Rolf Harris, right? Whoever he might be.
And what if Willie comes back for it?
Tell him to hop on a bus to Baker Street. Come along, Watson. Shake a leg. Shake a leg. Who said us toffee-nosed ponces don't have a sense of humour, eh?
Dear reader of this journal, Dr. Watson asked me to read out this next bit as he's got an appointment with his barber and tailor. Well, he wants to look his best when he goes to the Battersea Workhouse. Don't ask me why, he's as big a ponce as Mr. Holmes. Anyway, 2 hours later in the superintendent's office at the Battersea Workhouse. I must say, Dr. Watson does look a right lardy with his waxed moustache and Savile Row schmutter.
Good day to you, gentlemen. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. We had a slight emergency in the punishment quarters. Some of our guests working the treadmill have been discovered taking steroids. They're being severely chastised by having the hairs up their nostrils plucked out with tweezers. What can I do for you?
Hello, another one building his part up. You are the overseer of this workhouse, I believe.
I have that honour, sir, so to speak. The name's Dick Nasty. Mr. Nasty to my underlings, but I would be most honoured if you would call me Dick.
No, I'd rather not.
Can I offer you some refreshment? A cup of gruel? A bowl of sops? A whack-dropping infested crust of bread, perhaps?
No thwanks. Tempting though your offer is, we've already dined. I'll come straight to the point, Mr. Nasty. Has this man been admitted to your workhouse recently? Watson, show him the theatre handbill with Willie Eckerslike's photograph on it.
Oh, yes, there you are.
Devil take me, yes. Is that who he is? We're about to admit him to the asylum. A hopeless case. In fact, he's in the room next door being processed, so to speak. Mr. Mackay, bring number 297 in here, if you'll be so kind.
Oh, I say, that is most barbaric. How can the poor fellow hop with his ankle shackled?
I'm sorry, gentlemen, but it's in the workhouse rules. Anyway, is this the man you seek?
By Jove, yes. Mr. Eckerslike, we are your friends and we're here to help you.
Oh, warrior, you ponsified Whig malarians. Sling your hook before I give you a smack in the gob with a wet haggis.
Great Moira Andersons, it's worse than I thought. The poor wretch is totally deranged. He's under the delusion he's a Scottish fishwife.
You useless, haggis-brained, eagly-eyed, clooty dumpling. I'll give you a Gorbals kiss on the head. I'll flatten you, you mickle-brained Sussex.
Dear reader of this journal, we could only watch helplessly as the poor wretch that was once the Yorkshire wag was dragged off by the manacles to the Happy Glades Lunatic Asylum in Bognor. Holmes and I returned to Baker Street, stopping off at the tobacconist on the way for Holmes's usual rough shag. Then, back in our lodgings, the country's foremost detective, with lit meerschaum in one hand and mirror in the other, took time off to smoke and reflect.
Marvellous. Most satisfying.
Your pipe tobacco?
No, my reflection in the mirror. Now, what was it you were rambling on about in the cab?
I was telling you that there was another former music hall artiste in that workhouse.
Really?
Yes. I saw him as we left. The poor wretch was none other than Percy Endwards, the farmyard impersonator.
Yes, I remember him. He didn't do the noises, he just did the smells.
That's
I remember. Most disgusting act he was. Suddenly disappeared from the circuit, one assumed due to the unpopularity of his performance.
Well, I have the programme of the night I saw him. It would have been about 6 months ago. Let me see. There. Yes, here it is. He was third on the bill. Look.
A bill shared with, among others who I won't mention, as we've milked the funny names to death, Huge Deeney, the obese escapologist.
The very same.
Strange how this man is always appearing the same week as the artists who have subsequently disappeared. Watson, how do you fancy doing a turn?
What?
You and I are going to become music hall performers. Oh, just arrived in this country from France, where we've been a huge success. We shall find out where Huge Deeney is next appearing and make sure we're on the same bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, and those of you who ain't too sure, welcome to Music All Night at the Spittoon and Cesspit, Dagenham's most sophisticated night spot. Top of our bill tonight is our international star, Huge Deeney, the obese escapologist. But first, we welcome from across the English Channel a couple of frog geezers called Mange Tout and Petit Pois.
Bonjour, bonjour. Good evening, good evening. Thank you, we've heard it. Good evening. And what's your cocks? If you will pardon moi slipping into the vernaculars there. I am Mange Tout, and this is my bijou Gallic chum, Petit Pois. Who sprechen Sie no Anglais?
Je suis non-English.
Exactly. Tonight, we are pleased to present our world-famous Adagio act, which we performed in the French Revue, plastered in Paris. What a pissoir up that was. And for the climax, Petit Pois here will take off all his clothes, then do the splits over a bucket of live lobsters.
Do what?
He say, which as everyone knows is French for my pleasure. But first, I would like to sing a song made famous by your very own Harry Champion. I can't do my belly button up, can't do my belly button button up. It's so tight, serves me right. Must have eaten too much grub last night. I can't do my belly button up. And do you think it's treachery? What's the use of buttoning the other belly buttons when the belly button's undone? I don't mean maybe. The belly button's undone. Bonsoir.
Monsieur Toot. If Mr. Genie finds out I've let you in his dressing room, he'll have my guts for garters, or worse, the other way round. Hey, what do you want in there, anyway?
We are the old chums, Huge and I. We work together at the Gas Mantle Fitters Club in Hartlepool. And I'm wishing to surprise him with a little present. Come along, Petit. Move your derriere.
Oh, strap up. What's the matter with your friend?
I'm afraid one of the lobsters is refusing to let go.
Oh, I wonder what that was wriggling in your trousers. Oh, blimey, look at the time. I've got to go on the door and chuck in a few more undesirables. See you for the second house.
Now, let's search Huge Deeney's dressing room while he's performing his act. There must be some clues in here.
I don't like this at all, Holmes. Huge Deeney could come in at any time and discover us.
Be quiet, Watson, and put that lobster down. Now, help me search.
I'll see if that tall boy in the corner has anything to offer.
By Jove, there's a feed line if ever there was one. Aha! What have we here?
You found something?
Yes, a suitcase containing clothes. Clothes to fit an average-sized man and...
Yes?
An artificial leg.
My God, there's an orchestra in here as well.
The whole pub must have heard that. We'd better make a hasty retreat back to Baker Street. I'll take the suitcase. You bring the wooden leg.
Oh, not again. Dash it all, Holmes. It's not decent. It hasn't got any trousers on.
Watson, you are getting dangerously close to a you-know-what.
Smack botties.
Precisely. So stop faffing about and follow me.
Very well. Dear reader of this journal, the following morning in our rooms at Baker Street, Holmes had a visitor. It was none other than Rosie, the tainted woman who plied her trade outside Wilton's Music Hall. She brought with her an item of considerable interest and assistance to our investigations. When Rosie left, minus the item she had brought, plus half a crown for her trouble, less the change she owed my colleague from a previous interview, Holmes had 3 artificial legs on the table to study.
You made a meal of that, Watson, didn't you? Yes, this is most interesting. It would appear that... Heaven and damnation, will I never be allowed to continue?
Oh, who's an old misery guts this morning?
What do you want, Mrs. Hudson?
Saints preserve us. What are you doing with 3 artificial legs on my table?
I thought I'd build myself a grand piano and start with something to support it on.
Don't you come the old acid with me, Mr. Holmes, or I'll start spitting in your coffee again. I only asked a civil question.
Holmes is conducting an inquiry at the moment, and we think these limbs may provide clues.
Not think, Watson. Know for sure.
Oh?
Wooden legs can tell us a vast amount about their owners. No doubt you've read my monograph entitled Characteristics and Quirks of the Prosthetic Limb and Its Role in the Criminal Fraternity?
No, I confess I haven't ploughed through that one.
Oh, I have. I come across it when I was rummaging through your drawers.
Did you?
Yes. This one, if I'm not mistaken, is an LJ Silver Mark I with ball-jointed hollow patella. And this looks like the Ahab Deluxe 1874 model. Also ball-jointed with hollow patella.
I congratulate you on your acute knowledge of the subject, Mrs. Hudson. You are quite correct. And this third one is a fine example of the work of Kelly from the Isle of Man. All 3 constructed by different manufacturers, but all 3 with something in common.
They've all got hollow patellas, am I right, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, Mrs. Hudson. On this one here, I discovered a residue of powder, which I thought at first might be chalk to stop the joint from squeaking. Until I sniffed and tasted it, that is.
What was it, Holmes?
Well, when I came down from the ceiling, I realized it was pure opium. You know what I think?
Oh, my stars. You're not saying these wooden legs is being used to smuggle opium in the knee joints, are you?
I cannot abide a smart-ass housekeeper, Mrs. Hudson. Isn't there something you should be doing in the kitchen?
Oh, yes. I came up here to give you this letter which arrived in the midday post.
Yeah. Dear Sherlock Holmes, I believe you have a number of items belonging to me which you're not entitled to. I shall call at your lodgings to collect them. Your humble servant and admirer. P.S. This is me ringing the doorbell right now. You better let him in, Mrs. Hudson.
Right you are, Mr. Holmes. Stupid git.
Who do you think it could be, Holmes?
My guess is that it's Huge Deeney, the obese escapologist. Or his alias.
His alias?
You remember the suitcase we brought back from his dressing room?
You said it contained clothes to fit an average-sized man.
Mm-hmm. These clothes are the ones that the overseer of the Battersea workhouse was wearing.
Dick Nasty? By Jove, you're right.
Very observant of you, Mr. Holmes.
Just one of my many attributes, Mr. Deeney.
I can't get over it. A turn in my house. Oh, do you think I could have your autograph, Mr. Huge?
I never give autographs, madam.
Snotty pillock.
He's no more a turn than I am, Mrs. Hudson. Your straitjacket escape while submerged in a vat of cottage cheese failed to impress me, Mr. Deeney.
Oh, I don't know. It impressed me, Holmes, particularly for a man of his, pardon my bluntness, girth.
Girth? Pass me that hatpin, Mrs. Hudson.
Well, here you are. What you going to do with it?
I'm going to give Mr. Deeney a slow puncture.
You have, sir.
Oh, by Joe, Holmes, he's deflating.
Not Mr. Deeney, Watson. Just his rubber fat suit. And underneath we find Mr. Dick Nasty, overseer of the Battersea workhouse.
Well, I'm blessed.
You appear to be well informed, Mr. Holmes. Perhaps you would care to elucidate.
Not in front of Mrs. Hudson, never.
Oh, don't mind me.
Oh, very well. Thanks to Rosie, my tarnished visitor earlier this morning...
You mean your bit of totty?
Succinctly put, Mrs. Hudson, thanks to Rosie, I learned a great deal about what's been going on. It would appear a large number of her clients are members of the music hall fraternity, and another of her clients was, and I use the past tense, was none other than Dick Nasty.
Purely business, I assure you, not pleasure.
Cover your ears, Mrs. Hudson. The man has a filthy tongue in his head.
Get naughty, Doctor. This is getting interesting.
If I might be permitted to continue, Rosie would provide the names of all the one-legged musical performers she encountered to Dick Nasty, who then set about gaining their confidences. What easier way than to disguise himself as Huge Deeney, the obese escapologist, and contrive to be on the same bill as the aforementioned monopeds. Nasty bribed them to smuggle opium back into this country, courtesy of their wooden limbs, whenever the artists performed abroad, and within a few months had the most profitable business in operation.
Would anyone like a nice cup of tea?
Not now, Mrs. Hudson. Holmes is showing off.
Inevitably, his single-limbed couriers became greedy, or threatened to unmask him, so they had to be silenced. They were kidnapped, taken forcibly to the workhouse where their memories were erased by hypnosis. The latest victim was the owner of the leg Rosie brought me this morning, Pegleg Peregrine, the hopping balloon sculptor.
Well, Sherlock Holmes, my admiration grows by the minute.
Really?
Yes. But you have omitted one important detail.
I know. I haven't finished yet.
Oh, God.
There's only one person who comes anywhere near close to my master in disguise, and I happen to know he has a second cousin twice removed by the name of Miss Eleanor Mentry, the latent buzzard. Stand back, everyone, while I unmask the fiend.
Oh, my stars.
Bless my soul, if it isn't...
Yes, none other than my archest of arch-enemies, Professor Moriarty.
Curse you, Holmes. I warn you, this sword is loaded with bullets. One false move and I'll be forced to strangle you with it.
Not so fast. See? This paper bag here is full of air. You make one false move and I'll burst it in your face.
You swine. You know how I hate bangs.
That's not what Mrs. Hudson said.
Be quiet, Holmes. In that case, I shall have to adopt another of my ingenious disguises and make my escape.
You think that will outwit me? You cannot hope to match my superior brain when it comes to the art of disguise.
Oh, yes, then what about this?
And what was that supposed to be?
A Yorkshire Terrier being sick on a swing.
Oh, really? Stand back. Muchos Landos!
Sakes alive, Mr. Holmes. What on earth was that?
A Spanish galleon in full sail with its own following wind.
Well, I think this has gone far enough.
Yes, it's all getting very silly. How about disguising yourself as gentle doves? Doves of peace, or is that too difficult for you?
A dove? I can't do a dove. I can do a pigeon.
Oh, look out, Holmes. He's making his escape.
Oh, lots of mussy. He's blown out the window.
Quick, pass me my 12-bore meerschaum.
Did you get him?
No, but I've just neutered next door's cat, that's for sure.
Well, that's it then. You've let him get away, Mr. Holmes. He's stuffed you.
I think not. We'll just sit here quietly for an hour or so. He'll be back.
What makes you so sure?
The idiot disguised himself as a homing pigeon.
That was the newly discovered casebook of Sherlock Holmes. The part of Sherlock Holmes was played by Mr. Royston Hudd, Dr. Watson by Mr. Christopher Emmett, and Mrs. Hudson and other feminine characters were depicted by Miss June Whitfield. The portrayal of Professor Moriarty and a multitude of other masculine characters was rendered by Mr. Geoffrey Whitehead. At the pianoforte was Mr. Ian Smith, the dialogue was scribed by Mr. Anthony Hare, and the entire extravaganza was produced by Mr. Christopher Neal.